Thank you. I'd like to, before we begin, remember two members of our community who recently passed away. Patricia Gabriel passed away peacefully, surrounded by her family on August 9th at the age of 81. A lifelong resident of Newburyport, Patricia was a proud graduate of Immaculate Conception High School in Newburyport and the Beverly School of Nursing. After raising her 5 children, she pursued further education, earning a Bachelor of Science degree from New England College. Her dedication to helping others was evident in her career, first as a nurse and later as a sexual assault investigator for the police departments in Amesbury and Newburyport. Her commitment to seeking justice for survivors and providing them with the support they needed was a true testament to her strength and compassion. She's survived by her 5 children and their spouses, and she was the beloved grandmother of 16 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. So let's hold her and her family in our thoughts. And also more recently, Ronald Teal Sr., age 75, passed on August 31st. Ronald was born in Newburyport in 1948, dedicated his career to GTE, Sylvania Quartz glass industry. His love of freshwater fishing and kayaking was well known. Above all, Ronald cherished spending time with his family. He leaves behind his wife of 55 years, Nancy Teal. He's survived by 2 sons, Ronald Teal Jr. and Luke Teal, and a brother, Robert of Amesbury, as well as 7 grandchildren, along with extended family and many dear friends. Also, Mayor Reardon's sister is the wife of Luke Teal, one of the sons. So our condolences go to that family, and please remember them as we take a moment of silence. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, would be so kind as to call the roll?
I would be happy to, Mr. President, for the City Council meeting of September 9th, 2024 at 7 p.m. Councilor Shan.
Present.
Councilor Wright.
Here.
Councilor Z. Here. Councilor Donahue.
Here.
Councilor Granis.
Here.
Councilor Harmon.
Here.
Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor Lane is currently absent on his way, I'm told. Councilor McCarley.
Here.
Councilor Preston.
Here.
And Councilor Cameron.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. Late files?
We have a number of them, 6 to be exact. Appointment 513, Eric Chiaffi, 14 Morin Road to the Waterfront Trust, 10/15/2027, Community Services. Appointment 514, Claudio Lilienfeld, 11 Purchase Street, Alternate Tree Commission, 10/15/2027, Community Services. Appointment 515, Matthew W. Simons, Newburyport Police Marshal, 10/15/2029, Public Works and Safety, Committee of the Whole. Communication 575, Acting Marshal, 2nd Extension, receive and file. Communication 576, Memo ADU Zoning Amendment to the P&D, Planning and Development. Order 602, Affordable Housing Plan, again to Planning and Development. And those are the late files this evening, Mr. President.
Okay, what is the wish of the council?
Motion to waive the rules to accept, but can we walk through them instead of accepting the respective assignments there on the right?
Put them in the regular agenda?
Or handle them now, but just...
Yep.
Do you want to do it one at a time, such as the appointments?
I think so.
Sure.
So we have 2 appointments, 513, 514.
So motion to waive the rules and accept those 2 and approve them on first reading.
Second.
Okay. We'll do a voice vote on that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Okay, thank you.
Next, we would have Matthew W. Simons, Newburyport Police Marshal, Public Works and Safety Committee of the Whole.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion to receive and file Communication 575.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you.
Motion to receive and file Communication 576.
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Receive and file?
Yes.
Yeah, just push it up. We have.
Wait, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Do we stand up? Well, no, I guess we do
Yeah.
for this one. Yeah, thank you, Council President. Do we want to keep that and send it to committee with the ADUs?
Councillor Z?
Yeah, my thought was exactly, there's the, oftentimes these come and then there's like 4 other things and they all go into committee. So I thought a receive and file would be appropriate here. We've accepted it. It's the planning director's view or comments, I suppose, on the proposal, and I'm sure the proposal itself will garner a lot of conversation. So I am in a mood to kind of keep the agenda clean, and there's a lot of stuff in here, and that'll be a theme throughout the evening. So that's my rationale if the council is willing to accept it. Thank you.
Councillor Khan?
Yeah, I think as sponsor, one of the things that we want to do while we were talking about it is this communication does a good job of at least identifying what the state has we thought of different ways that could be shared, whether it was a presentation that would be done to us before it comes in, or to have it put in from the planning department's perspective on what the state has said, as well as their kind of thoughts as we are together talking. So as you'll see, if you've gotten a chance on, my apologies, it's a late file. I think that's the tough part here. But because it's a late file and people haven't had a chance to read it, there's really good points that you could see on some of the things that what we introduced is maybe not in alignment with what the planning department's thinking and what they're thinking. So I think it's fair to have this document also available. So I would like to make an amendment that we also refer that to planning and development.
Second.
Okay, so I guess that's amended to...
So it needs a vote on the floor, Mr. President, I think.
I'll withdraw the original motion.
So it's on the floor as a planning and development.
Okay, so motion is to planning and development. Okay, thank you. Any further comment, discussion? All those in favor of referral to planning and development, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, thank you.
Can that be made committee of the whole, please?
So motion for the order 602 affordable, are you talking about the memo or are you talking about the order?
The order.
The order, to make that committee of the whole.
My motion was to continue to September 30th. If I could get a second, I would explain my rationale.
Second.
So, Mr. President, my goal here with continuance is, frankly, to spread out the work. This packet, to me, represents 4 nights a week for the next 6 months, and I don't think that's reasonable for us to do. We spend a lot of time when we have a dull moment, which is rare, talking about the time commitment, and so I'm trying to meter out the work, and frankly, this is not a zoning ordinance, so it's not on a timeline, but there are numerous other things in the packet that will be on a statutory timeline, and we only have 1 meeting in December. So this is a bit of air traffic control on my behalf, if the council is willing to accept. And I thought about saying, well, let's just not take it in tonight and wait, but I think a continuance gives a 2-week delay, and then it can be ingested into committee at that time to just give some time for things to start to work through.
Okay, Councillor Shand?
So I appreciate my fellow councilors wanting to hold things off. I don't have a problem this coming in. We weren't going to bring it up anyway. We do have a full agenda in the coming weeks with the public hearing on the 18th. So we weren't going to bring this up, but since this was coming in, and we do have the meeting this coming Wednesday night on the housing development plan, this seemed appropriate to keep it in the packet tonight. So I don't have a problem with this going to P&D, and we weren't going to act on it till probably later this month, if not early October.
Okay. So the motion on the floor that's been made and seconded, though, is to continue to September 30th
As a COTW.
as a COTW.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, Councillor Donahue?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it would make sense to just send it in to committee because we're not going to, meet on it right away. I do appreciate the rationale behind the, asking to hold off, but for the reasons stated by the at-large councillor, I just want to echo that it really ought to just kind of move along. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Khan?
Yeah, thank you, Council President. First of all, I don't see us as air traffic control folks. So we have work to do. Things come in when they come in, and that's our job. We take items and we move them into the committees, and especially something like a housing plan, which we know has been coming before us. We knew that we kept hearing tidbits of information that the plan has, especially given the conversations we're going to have with the work that's already in planning and development. This kind of paints that whole picture. So I would like to make a motion to send it to planning and development and amend or provide a new motion that we send it to planning and development.
Okay, but we still have the original motion on the floor, I believe, right?
That motion to amend, since it's the motion on the floor.
Councillor Z?
Yeah, I think it's okay to disagree on the role of the council, but we do absolutely have prerogative on our own matters to determine what our agenda looks like. And I want to be clear that the cost is quality. The cost is the quality, the amount of time we're able to spend on something and process it. And so you've got, I don't know, when I read this packet, I think it was, if other councillors who've read numerous packets, I think would agree, it's pretty hefty. And that's fine, and it's true, work comes in when it comes in, but how we meter that work out is absolutely within our own prerogative.
Councillor Preston?
Yeah, just briefly. So, you know, as a member of Planning and Development, I do actually really appreciate the recognition of the load within Planning and Development. And I'm not terribly passionate as long as the chair of Planning and Development is saying this isn't going to be taken up over the next 2 weeks. I do, however, really want to point out the title page to this says June 2024. So this has been sitting since June, and it's September, and it's coming in as a late file. So I don't understand why, you know, waiting 2 weeks on it is really going to make a major difference either.
Okay, Councillor Shand?
Sure, I'm happy to explain that. This had to go to the state to be approved before it could come to the council, and it came to us back from the state on Friday, which is why it came in this week. And we wanted to make sure it actually did come in because we do have the housing development meeting on Wednesday night, which is why we wanted to get it in the packet this night. So when we got into planning and development, at least it was in there. That's why it's late, because the state had to approve it first, and it did not come back from the state until Friday.
Okay, Councillor McCauley, then Councillor Zeid again.
Yeah, you know, again, I'm agnostic on the timeline. I appreciate going forward, but I would like to make a comment on the timeliness of this. The minutes from the Affordable Housing Trust in April that they just posted, and the ones in June, they've actually been reviewing this and made comments on it and recommendations to the state. So I'm still unsure why we didn't get a bite at the apple to be able to make our recommendations to the state and have those accommodated. So once again, we're playing a little catch-up here, in so much that other bodies have looked at our work and made recommendations, and now we have to, under a gun and a timeline, let's say, have to accommodate things that were appropriated. Frankly, I'd like to see some of the red lines, if we're going to go forward with this, some of the red lines that were made and proposed to the state going forward from some of our appointed boards. Thank you.
I'm going to allow Director Port to talk, who raised his hand. He's out in Zoom land. Director Port, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Do you have any comment on what's been said process-wise, timing-wise?
Yes, just to clarify, it's the regional planning agency that's preparing the plan with us, and unfortunately that process of getting it back took longer than we had expected. We had been pressing for it, but we just got it back. The Housing Trust had commented on the draft plan, and that was taken into account in working on the draft. It has not yet been forwarded to the state. It's the regional planning agency that in fact is working on it, and that was where we had a little bit of delay. But the plan is prepared. It is actually required as part of that safe harbor status that we've been talking about. So I'll defer to the council on the time frame from here. I don't know that a couple of weeks will make that difference per se in the end result. But to let you know, we were trying to get it into as soon as we were able to. It lines up with a number of things we're doing on housing this fall, and it is required for the safe harbor status. So we thought the sooner we're able to mobilize on all the things that are some of them required by the state, MBTA communities and accessory dwelling units, and in this case, the housing production plan, we thought it would make sense to mobilize them as soon as we are able to do so. I certainly would love to move things faster, but unfortunately there are sometimes bureaucratic processes required to get various things done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shand.
Just a quick one. My apologies. It wasn't the state, it was the regional department. But again, we will be acting on this later this month.
All right, so the motion on the floor, Mr. Clerk.
So what I see is we have a first and second on a continuance to 9:30, and we have a motion to amend to Planning and Development in Committee of the Whole, I trust. That needs a second.
Second.
Does not need a second anymore. So that motion to amend is on the floor, Mr. President.
Okay. So we should let the record reflect that Councillor Lane has joined us at 7:12. Thank you for being here, Councillor. Motion to amend was made and seconded. Discussion on the amendment. Okay. Councillor Wright.
Guys, this is a waste of time. It's in the packet, it's in the record, it's on the record. Whether we send it one way or we delay it by 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. It's in the record, it's in the packet. It's been submitted.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So we'll do a voice vote on the amendment.
Or roll call.
Roll call, probably a good idea.
What amendment?
This is a motion to amend the matter to P&D and Committee of the Whole instead of the underlying motion, which is continued to September 30th.
Okay.
Ready, Mr. President?
I think so.
The motion to amend.
So basically, the motion to amend supersedes the original motion.
Correct. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zeid.
No.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Granis.
Yes.
Councilor Harmon.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane.
Yes.
Councilor McCauley.
No.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
So the motion to amend passes. The motion on the floor is to send the matter to P&D and Committee of the Whole.
Okay. I'll do a roll call on this.
On the aforesaid motion, Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Wright.
Yes.
Councilor Zeid.
Yes.
Councilor Donahue.
Yes.
Councilor Granis.
Yes.
Councilor Harmon.
Yes.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor Lane. Councilor McCauley.
Yes.
Councilor Preston.
Yes.
And Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Matter goes to P&D and Committee of the Whole.
All right, thank you. That would bring us to public comment. We'll take public comment in-house first. If somebody out in Zoom land wants to raise their hand, and they can do that before we wrap up. On-site public comment, they could also speak. So this would be Newburyport resident, 2 minutes on a matter that's on the agenda. First, we'll start with Thomas Rich, and if you could go up to the microphone and state your name, address, and 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thomas Rich, 113 Moulton Street. Hello, my name is Thomas Rich. I'm a sophomore at Newburyport High School, and I'm here to share my support for the Bike Share Initiative. Back in June of 2023, I was finishing up my 8th grade year at the NOC and did a research project for my social studies class on the potential bike share program in Newburyport. I chose this topic because I am an avid mountain bike racer and have been for over 5 years, and seen firsthand the positive nature that bikes bring to people's physical and mental health. During the process, I learned all that I could about how this might work, including doing case studies on local towns with similar systems to the one being proposed. The results were unanimously positive, so I shared the compiled research with Newburyport Livable Streets. Since then, they have worked hard to develop a feasible plan for a pilot program. In recent months, I've started interning with ACES, the Alliance of Climate and Environmental Stewards. I get to see on a daily basis the efforts that are being made in this community to progress towards a greener future for the benefit of my generation and ones to come. Approving this initiative could be the biggest step yet. Additionally, the initiative will provide another source of low-cost public transit. This could be crucial to low-income families, particularly those with students who need transportation but either can't afford a car or can't rely on a bus schedule. With such profound benefits to personal well-being and overall community sustainability. I hope you'll take this opportunity into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate that. Chris Cunningham.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Chris Cunningham, 129 Low Street. I'm in solidarity with the first speaker, complete support of the bike share program. One thing I love most about Newburyport is I think a lot of Newburyport people like to get outdoors. There's a lot of dog walkers, cyclists, walkers, runners, and I think especially it's a reason that people move to Newburyport. I think it's a very walkable, bikeable city, and I think doing something like this, like the pilot bike share program, really shows that we understand our community and we really want to cater to both the people who live here and the tourists that we get that mean so much to us. I did want to share, I visited Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which matters in this case because they have a very similar bike share program there. It's run by one of the vendors that Newburyport Livable Streets is thinking of using, Tandem Mobility. And I used the bike share program there, and it works really well. The app is easy to use. The bikes are comfortable. They have a bell. They have 3 speeds. It was really a good experience. But I think when I was using the bike in Harrisburg, I thought Newburyport is a much better city for this bike share program. The streets in Harrisburg are really bike friendly. The city is bigger. The traffic is quicker. It's a little more dangerous. But Newburyport has the perfect infrastructure for this, with the bike trail, with our quieter, sort of less traffic streets in the south end and the immediate north end. I just think it would work really well here. And I also just really want to support Newburyport Livable Streets. Back in February, I saw a little article in the Newburyport Daily News about a bike share program proposal with a survey that I filled out and an invitation to their meetings, and I've been going to their meetings ever since. And I can't help but feel I'm a little bit more of a passenger than a driver in that organization, but I'm still proud of what I've done there. And I just think it would work out really well for this city. And I'd really want to support, Eric Tracy is here, and he's done a lot of work finding funding for this program. What we're doing is giving you a program that's well-planned, pretty much fully funded at this point for a three-year pilot program, which I think will work really well. I'm a public educator. I believe we should always learn at any opportunity we can, and that's what a pilot program is for, to set something in motion, to evaluate it, to assess it, and to see how it works. And it will cost virtually nothing. It's been well organized, and I can't see any reason to oppose it. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Keith Viglione.
Thanks. Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Keith Viglione, 38 Phillips Drive, Newburyport. I'm here tonight to speak on the issue of extending the Newburyport Arts and Culture Shanty Program license to the end of the year. I would also like to formally introduce myself as the city liaison on the steering committee for the shanties, sponsored by the Firehouse Center for the Arts. I lived here in Newburyport for the past 25 years. I'm a photographer, and I own 617 Images. I've had the opportunity of exhibiting my work at the shanties, which has only deepened my appreciation for the value this program brings to our city. In the wake of John Moynihan's departure from the Firehouse, I will also be assuming the responsibility for all communications and permits related to the shanty program. My goal is to foster an environment of open dialogue and ensure the smooth operation of the program moving forward. I'm here tonight to express my strong support for extending the license of the arts and culture shanties through the end of this year. This program now represents over 100 artists, those who have participated and also those who are eager to be part of it in the future. The shanties offer local artists a valuable public space to showcase their work, enriching the cultural landscape of Newburyport. Beyond supporting artists, the shanties have drawn more visitors to our waterfront, boosting the local economy and enhancing the experience for both residents and tourists. Extending the license will allow this important program to continue through the fall and holiday seasons, which are crucial for artists and local businesses alike. In addition to my strong support for the extension, this afternoon I've emailed the city clerk and members of the License and Permits Committee letters of support from artists and members of the greater Newburyport community. Hope the members take the time to read these letters so they can see for themselves how important the license extension is for these artists and for the city. Finally, myself and the rest of the steering committee are working on a proposal for plans in January of 2025 and beyond. I'll be back here in December with the proposal for all of you. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith. Rick Tinker?
Good evening, Rick Tainter, 10 Dexter Street. I'm here to speak about the mayor's communication on the bike share program. I'm a member of the board of Newburyport Livable Streets and part of the team that has been working on developing this proposal over the past 10 months. We have been working closely with the mayor's office, and we think we have a plan that is ready to present more formally to the city council at this point for your information and feedback. I can't do anything that's any better than what Tommy and Chris have done introducing it here. So I guess my ask is just to support that you refer this to Community Services Committee so that we can do, as I say, a formal proposal and respond to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila Tainter?
Sheila Tainter, 10 Dexter Street. I feel if the speaker before me felt that we've covered bike share, maybe I could feel the same thing. I just want to say how excited I am for us to try this concept in Newburyport. I think it will benefit our residents, our visitors, and our employees. And I think it'll be very exciting to see how it works out. So I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane Snow?
Jane Snow, 9 Coffin Street. I went to the Affordable Housing Trust meeting on Thursday night, and the proposal, the new housing proposal was talked about, and many of the residents there said it was difficult to be at a meeting and it's up on a slide and you're trying to catch up with, and there is a lot of information, and it was good information. So we were promised that it would be in the council packet. As of 6 o'clock this morning when I was reading the council packet, it isn't available for us to see. So I don't know if councilors have a different version of that packet, but we have a meeting on Wednesday night, and I'm sure, again, it will be referenced. And I really don't think it's fair that it's out there, but the residents don't have the chance to look at it. And it would be helpful to be able to ask an intelligent question on Wednesday night when you have all those people gathered. So I don't know what to say about where it is, but I don't think it's...
It is in there now. I don't know when it was put in, but it is in there now.
4 o'clock this afternoon.
In the packet.
Late this afternoon?
This afternoon, yeah.
Okay, because, most people don't check it late this afternoon,
Yep.
or I don't.
Yep.
But anyway, but thank you for that, because it really is important that people get a chance to read it. It has a lot of great information, and I appreciate that it's the updated version from 2018. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike Leonard?
Hey, good evening, Mike Leonard, 13 Ting Street. And speaking on Communication 573, I'll go through this quick, and I'm talking specifically on the Standard & Poor's May 17, 2024 Ratings Direct Report. Just 4 quick points. The first one, in the report itself, the firm indicated its report was based on a draft of the 2023 audited financials. So they're doing the report May 17th, waiting for June 30, 2023. Quite a delay. The city's financial policy already provides a liberal 9-month lead time from the end of the fiscal year to the production of the audit report. So here you're almost 11 months. Same in fiscal 2022. The report was produced about 11 months after the close of the fiscal year end, beyond the 9-month standard of the financial policy, so hopefully the timeliness of completed audited financials improves. One standing observation by S&P in their last 3 reports is reference to an overly aggressive discount rate on the city's pension liability calculation. S&P says 6, Newburyport uses 7, and perhaps it would be prudent to err on the side of conservatism in determining the pension liability. You can say it's just a 1% differential, but that's about $17 million in net pension liability at June 30, 2023. In the same way, S&P for Newburyport always includes language about the potential impact of pension and OPEB liabilities as potential sources of credit pressure, and a couple of areas that they focus on, areas that invite greater, what they call analytical focus. What I would say greater scrutiny is when the combined OPEB and pension are 10% or greater of governmental fund expenditures. Newburyport's around 9. It's right in that report. It's kind of trended up a little bit in the last few years, but it stayed under that threshold. Another ratio they look at, the actuarial funded ratio of the pension plan. If it's less than 80, it gets scrutiny by them. Newburyport's at 69. And I know this number does fluctuate year to year, but I assume it'll take on greater importance when all municipalities approach the state's 2040 full funding requirement for pensions. My last point is the actuarial analysis of the pension plan. PIRAC, which is the state commission that oversees this, in its communication with the city, it should be done by fiscal year 2025, which is where we're at. Maybe it's already been done, or maybe it's ongoing. I'm not sure, but seems like we need to update this, and it'll be interesting to see what the updated funding appropriations are coming from this analysis, as it looks like as of June 30th, 2023, the liability, the actual unfunded liability, is greater than what our existing schedule shows, but that schedule is over 2.5 years old now, from January 1 of 2022, so hopefully that gets updated now or very soon.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Lindsay Haight.
Good evening. Lindsay Haight, Executive Director for Our Neighbors Table. We are located in Amesbury and Salisbury, and if you'll grant me permission to address the council tonight, I'm not addressing a formal agenda item, but I welcome the opportunity to be a formal agenda item for a future meeting. But I just want to introduce myself and our organization to the council and to members of the Newburyport City who may not yet know about us. We've been serving the food needs of Newburyport residents since 1992. Many of you may be aware that in 2018, we opened a market here in Newburyport at the St. Paul's Church, just 2 years after opening our first free grocery store in Amesbury, and just after declaring Amesbury our first, and to my knowledge still the only city in the country declared food secure, where food is universally available whether you can afford it or not, even during a global pandemic. We are very excited to be able to work collaboratively with all of the organizations that are serving members of the Newburyport community. Since 2011, we've convened a group called the Seacoast Food Providers, and this year we're really excited to broaden that umbrella to engage and collaborate with more than 27 organizations across the Lower Merrimack Valley under a coalition Our Neighbors Table has coined the Lower Merrimack Valley Food Coalition. We're really excited to be able to serve that coalition to increase their food supply and enhance their service delivery to people across 17 communities, 32,000 people who are experiencing food insecurity, more than 18,000 people living here in Newburyport. 8% of them are experiencing food insecurity by our current data numbers. When you look at low-income rates among students, it's over 13% here in the Newburyport Public Schools. Last year, more than 800 Newburyport residents sought groceries, free groceries from Our Neighbors Table. This year, we're already on par to exceed those numbers. We're up 25% year over year for the last 3 years serving Newburyport community members. We are excited and welcome the opportunity to have council members come and tour our new facility. We won't be reopening. We had to close the Newburyport market because of COVID, but we're excited to have just opened a new free grocery store just over the bridge in Salisbury, just a half mile up the road, still on the bus route, where folks can come and shop, as well as our Amesbury site, which will be renovated and reopened on October 1st. But we'd love to have the council come and tour. We'd love to invite any member of the community to visit our website, ourneighborstable.org, whether you want to click on the link to get food, whether you want to click on the link to get involved, or go to our ourneighborstable.org/food hub page to learn more about this transformative project and how you can get involved in there. But on Monday, we'll have the state delegation coming for a tour. I welcome any of the city council members who want to come at 12 o'clock to 114 Bridge Road to join us. and any member of the community that would like to get involved or get the food that they need. So thank you very much. I look forward to addressing you again in the future. There's written materials here for
Great.
you all, and I'll leave some in the back table.
Thank you, Lindsay, and I know Will had reached out, and we'll connect and make that information available to
Great.
councillors. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
thank you
much.
to all who have been incredibly supportive thus far.
Thank you. Thank you. Richard Lodge.
I'm going to pass tonight.
Okay. And anyone online? Let me try to find that. Director Port, you had your hand raised up, which may be from before or might be now. We'll take that as a no. And I will figure out how to lower his hand, or he can lower all attendees' hands. Okay. Well, we'll let him talk at some other point. We have a few agenda items that may be. So that's it for public comment. I will go to the mayor's comment.
Great to see everyone. I feel like it's been forever. Thanks for mentioning Ron Teal tonight. That was obviously a tough week for the family. I was actually there when he passed. So anyways, I appreciate you mentioning him. He's a really terrific guy. Really kept up with everything that goes on in this room, which is really amazing. So we had a lot of nice conversations over the last couple of years around that. I also wanted to bring up, Jim Sullivan's not here tonight. He covers the city council in the city for the Daily News. His mom, Carol, passed away on Saturday. So in case if you didn't know that, I wanted to let you know that, but that's why he's here tonight, and I just want to let him know that we're all thinking of him and praying for him. I'm going to try to be brief. You guys have a lot going on. Let's make a mental note. Next summer, when we want to see which meeting we want to take off, we're going to take the second meeting in July off, right? Not the second meeting in August. Okay, just make sure we pencil that in somewhere. Councilor Shan mentioned the Community Housing Forum. We're really excited about this for Wednesday. We just felt like we had so much going on this fall around housing, whether it be the Affordable Homes Act, whether it be MBTA communities, ADUs, we've got the Brown School, we've got Kmart going on, we've got, there's just a lot on our plate. We've got the housing production plan, which again, it's going to be launched on Wednesday night, so that's, if you have questions about it, we're going to launch it on Wednesday night. You can come in here and learn and ask your questions then as well. But just, we have a lot going on, so we just thought this would be a great opportunity to bring everyone together at the Senior Center at 7 p.m. and again, get a lot of great information out to the public. Okay, I am thrilled to bring the appointment of Lieutenant Matt Simons to you for our next police marshal, and if he was here, I would say, no, I'm really thrilled. First I want to thank, former Sheriff Frank Cousins and the 9-member panel. Councilor Lane served on that as well for just a really great job. They brought really 3 really terrific candidates to me for final interviews. And I mean, Lieutenant Simons clearly rose to the top, and he's got an incredible resume, which you'll get to check out. In your packet, you have a memo from me, you have the draft of the contract, you have an appointment letter, and you also have Matt's resume. Marine Corps veteran, been on the police force since 2002, graduated from Newburyport High School, became lieutenant in 2016. And what I really loved about Matt when speaking to him is that he came prepared. He came with a plan of where he's going to take this police department. And I think he also did the same thing to the 9-member panel. But he's been there, he's learned, he's listened. And just, I will mention this to Councilor Khan, talked to me earlier today. I had a couple other people mention this to me over the past week as we were going through final interviews. But there wasn't really a public part of this process. Not saying that there has been in the past or there necessarily should be, but there was no mechanism to kind of get some feedback of what maybe the city was looking for in the next marshal. So, after talking to Councilor Khan, we're going to have like a listening tour with hopefully our new marshal by the end of this month when Lieutenant Simons gets appointed. We're going to have a listening tour around Newburyport. We're going to have something at the Senior Center. We'll go to different locations and just be available. So one, you can come get to know your new marshal, but then talk about community policing, what's really concerning you in the city, what are opportunities, what do you think we're doing really well. So I mean, our next marshal is going to be on board with that, and we're excited to do that. And again, congratulations. I know a little bit about something about being a Newburyport kid and then getting to, the job you've always wanted. So I'm really happy for Lieutenant Simons. What else is going on? Brown School adaptive reuse. I don't know how closely everyone's paying attention to that. You know, we put an advisory group together last week. They finished up interviews with the 3 applicants to that RFP. We're now going to have each of those applicants fill out some questions, because we'd like to get some things in writing from them about what their flexibility is, what their plans could be. Once we get those back from the applicants, we're going to meet again as a group, and then we're going to go through the process of ranking in order the plans that speak to us, and then we'll move forward that way. Again, anything that happens with the Brown School will be decided between the 11 of you here, and we're hoping that, again, we have 3 great applicants, all different in their own way, and no perfect proposal right now. So I'm hoping once we get through, again, we had good interviews. Once we get the answers to some of these questions, we'll have and then once we, rate the proposals, we'll have a good path forward of bringing something to the council for them to discuss, for you to discuss and bring forward. Just some quick project updates. I mean, Lower Atkinson Street, just take a drive by. It looks amazing down there. There's going to be a lot of work happening the next month, too. Kim Turner wanted me to point out, if you want to go down there, check out the native ecosystem that's being established along the wooded edge behind Founders Field. It's actually pretty neat down there. And we're getting ready to do the gravel parking lot and the paved parking lot out front, and also the sidewalk. Streets and sidewalk work, I want to just thank the entire city of Newburyport for being patient as we try to get some of these projects done. Again, we have to get the sidewalks done and all the streets that we're doing, so we're trying to finish up Johnson this week, and then we're going to Middle Street, and then Eagle Street, and then once all that sidewalk work is done, and then DNR will come back and do the final layer of pavement on the streets. And so again, please bear with us, we're getting there. Phillips Drive should be paved later this fall. Drainage work on Noble Street will begin this fall. Trying to get ready for Noble Street to be done in the spring. And then we're going to also get a new sidewalk installed on Mosley Ave that will go down to the Spofford Street Rotary. Cutter Fire Station, I'm not going to read all that to you, but it's moving along, still on budget. Still a lot of significant work will be done over the next couple weeks. Again, with the goal being early October to move in to the West End Fire Station. And that's about it. Development of the old Kmart site was just the last thing I quickly mentioned. I brought together the 5 councillors in a meeting a couple weeks ago now, where we looked at a draft that Karis had put together, our city solicitor, around a development agreement. I took back a lot of great feedback, and we incorporated that into the draft and have sent that along to Lisa Mead, who is the attorney for the owner of Port Plaza, and that's where we're at with that right now. That's it from me.
Any questions or comments to the mayor? Councillor Khan and Councillor Preston.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A quick question. I think you said there was a draft contract on the police chief, and I didn't see it. Was that in the packet, or was that?
Everything should have been submitted. Yeah.
It is in the packet. Yeah.
Okay. Was that under the appointment?
Yes. It's appointment 515. Yep.
It's not in there.
I don't see it either, but maybe we could reconcile.
Might
My
have
fellow
been
councillor
updated,
doesn't see it either.
Yeah.
But I see a nod from Councillor Z, so you do see
Maybe
it.
in the updated appointment was.
Have to refresh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll refresh. Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you.
Councillor Preston?
Yeah, so a couple points. One, love the idea of the listening tour. I would just really encourage you to work with the paper to make sure that that gets maximum exposure so that we can get the most people there. I think that's a great way to really reach out to people. Secondarily is the development of the old Kmart site. What are next steps there? Like, as someone who wasn't a member of this ad hoc that you put together, I have a lot of concerns there. I don't see where this is going to touch the council again. So, where do I gain an understanding of next steps?
Yeah, I guess you can continue to reach out to my office, or I can continue to let the council know what's going on in city council meetings. But I'm happy to give you an update whenever you'd like to have one. Right now, it's just, it's a negotiation, so we're going back and forth on the development agreement. But you're right, it doesn't touch the council again, so, but I'm happy to update, whenever we have something to update.
Yeah, for the record, that's what I'm so gravely concerned about. But, and then lastly, just while I have the floor, and assuming maybe a lot of the public is going to leave, I just want to mention that the bike pass, our bike share program, since so many of you are here to make comment on that as chair of community services, we are intending to bring that up at our meeting on the 16th, which is this coming Monday. So I just didn't want you to all leave the room and not have a chance to say that. So I yield.
And I'll just say, it's been great working with Rick and Livable Streets on the bike share program. I think we've got a good plan in place. Like I said, most of the funding has been allocated, and we've got a city plan on how we're going to administrate it. So we're looking forward to presenting it at Community Services.
Thank you. Councillor Donahue and then Councillor Lane.
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you for that update. Those are all good points. I just have one question. Were there any, just out of curiosity, were there any external candidates for Marshall? Did we receive any
We
at
had
all?
3 finalists. We only had 1 internal candidate.
Oh, okay. Only one was internal. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Lane?
I know you thanked DPS for all the streets and sidewalks and Noble Street. Is that going to happen this year?
Did you hear what I talked about Noble Street?
sorry.
Drainage work is going to start this fall.
I didn't hear you say
Yeah,
that. I'm sorry.
and then in the spring is when the drainage work has to get done before we can do the street.
Great
So
news.
I think the spring, you know, you're going to look at State Street being one of the first streets we do, and Noble Street will be right after that.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yep, that's right.
I tuned you out.
I also said I'd be brief, and I'm still up here talking. So.
Yeah, all right. I think we're good. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, have a great
Thank
meeting.
you.
Good to see everyone.
Thank you.
Could I share the last 60 seconds of the mayor's time here?
Oh, sure. You're not on the agenda, but I think we can add you in there.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to come and introduce myself. Many of you, Mr. President, council members, Mr. Clerk, many of you I know well, some of you I'm acquainted with, some of you I haven't formally been introduced to yet, but I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm humbled and grateful at this opportunity that the mayor has given me by appointing me, and I'm hopeful that you will see the value in his choice. I'm appreciative of the process that I just went through. It was rigorous. There was integrity to the process. It was fair. And as difficult as it was, there was 2 things that really drove me. One was my love of community, in particular Newburyport. And my other was the passion that I have for leadership in law enforcement, not just in a chief's position, but through the entire organization. We need leaders in law enforcement at every level of the organization. So I really just wanted to say that the mayor mentioned a listening tour. To your point, Council Preston, this listening tour goes longer than Elton John has been playing at the Garden in New York. There's no end to it, right? I committed to the mayor that I was going to be present and available and listening to what he needs, and that extends to the city council and beyond that to the community. So I just really want to get that point across tonight as we start the process, you know, the formal process of, you know, the appointment. I'm going to be getting with the city clerk this week. I'll be sending out an email, so everybody will have my contact information, my work number, my personal cell. I'm going to be available, I'm going to be present, and I'm really looking forward to this opportunity. Again, grateful to the mayor for the trust that he's shown me. So I look forward to working together in this community.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you very much. Great. That will bring us to the consent agenda.
Which, Mr. President, consists this evening of the approval of the minutes for August 12th. There are a number of communications. 572, which is the capital improvement maintenance plan communication from Councilor Z, receive and file. Communication 573, which is the year-end financial report, go to Budget and Finance. The proposed bike share pilot program to go to Community Services. The amendment to the Chamber of Commerce Fall Festival, 10/12 to 10/13, license and permits. St. Vincent de Paul Walk for the Poor, 11/2, license and permits. Block party on Hancock Street from Bromfield Street to Lunt Street, 10/5, license and permits. And the Shanties extension, 10/1, proposed to December 31st, license and permits. We have one transfer, 199, police, $50,000 from portable police radios to police cruisers computers, $50,000, budget and finance. We have one appointment, Nancy S. Gahan, 21 Carter Street, to the Human Rights Commission until 10/15/2024. We have the following items removed from their committees: Budget and Finance, Order 586, License and Permits, applications 219, 225, 226, and 227. That, Mr. President, is a consent agenda this evening.
Mr. President, can we remove communications 572 and 574, please?
Okay, 572 and 573?
4.
4, okay, sorry.
2 and 4.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Okay, thank you. That will bring us to the next page, which is the regular agenda.
Motion to receive and file the mayor's update?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Okay. First reading appointments, there are none. Communications, we would bring 572 over from the consent agenda.
Receive and file.
Second.
Okay, Councillor Zede.
Thank you. I'm not changing the intended result of this, which is a receive and file. I just would ask for a few minutes from my colleagues just to explain a little bit about what I put together here and maybe why it's worth a few minutes of your time to review.
Please.
We have the actual revised CIP coming out of committee in a few moments, so I'm not going to talk about that, but rather out of the outcome of the previous conversation, there was a lot of discussion about amendments and or lack thereof, and do you have a better idea in a sense, if I could capture it in sort of a more shortened form. So I did endeavor at expense of time to put something together that I thought would be worthy of at least some conversation. We did have a little bit of that in budget, as I'll talk about in a bit. This document here is designed to do three things. Number one is, I think, to try and give some guidance as to what the CIP should or shouldn't be. For example, I presented in the top part, some philosophical standards against which the plan could be measured to determine whether it's a success, and then some actual tests to figure out whether the plan meets the stated goals. For example, one thing I've really felt strongly about is the CIP needs to be renamed to incorporate the word maintenance. Not my best marketing show with CIMP, but it's something to incorporate capital improvement and maintenance plan. And then I go on to talk about things that are really, frankly, after many CIPs coming and going through my time, are important to me, that this is not a wish list. It shouldn't be treated as a wish list. It's not free to be on the plan, for example. By existing on the CIP, there's an implication it should be worked on, and that can be in the form of staff time or grant applications, et cetera. That Newburyport really needs to get away from being run on the whim of grants. As we become more affluent, we qualify for fewer grants, but also I felt strongly that over the years there's been some tail wagging of the dog where a grant comes in and our priorities change on a dime, and that there needs to be a blend between debt and direct spending from the budget on capital and maintenance. And so we spend an inordinate amount of time talking about debt, but one of the reasons we're backed into a corner in a lot of cases to use debt is because we don't have any capacity to actually spend from our operating budget to just do things, and we're in my opinion, a bit of a death spiral with free cash that has become the everything fund, which is good until you don't have it anymore. In terms of developing a successful plan, I think maybe some of these are common sense, but the plan should be financially and operationally feasible. That seems common sense. They should be prioritized, and that taxpayers can get some expectation out of it, and that we're balancing all the burdens they may carry, and that it's sustainable. That's a word that I like to harp on in financial matters. I know there's other contexts for it as well. And does the plan really encompass all the projects? So I tried to give some bounds. I don't take for granted that, as I'll talk about in my other comments. I'm not sure there's harmony on the council or with the administration, either internally as a body or with what this thing should be. And I think that's the root cause of a lot of disagreement and a lot of discord, frankly, over it, and maybe something that needs to be hashed out over time. On the second page, I built an actual plan. I know that the finance director is quite a competent individual, of course, and presents to us as part of the CIP financial parts of it that go with it that indicate a certain level or not level of affordability. I have obviously, without hiding, have taken exception with some of those analyses. It does not mean I don't have a great deal of respect for the finance director, but believe it or not, there's a subjectiveness to finance in terms of what you can or should, and a lot of it goes into assumptions. And so I've presented to you and to everybody now in the form of the packet a different take on the plan. And I've given you my assumptions. Basically, it's a very simple model of saying, let's just ramp up our spending on capital and improvement maintenance at a rate of 10% per year, which far exceeds what most departments would go up. And then you crunch the numbers down, you figure out what you can afford to spend on new debt, and you figure out what you can afford to spend on pay-as-you-go, as they call it, or basically operating capital expenditure. And respectfully to everybody, you may not like it, you may not agree, but the numbers are all red. It does not balance. I could not reasonably make it balance by plugging in things, We have the Plumber Springs Bridge bond coming in tonight. Right now, we've got to make good on a commitment we made a few weeks ago. We're still waiting to hear from the NHS roofs, but even taking assumptions from the CIP give you years of red, and not a little bit of red, but a lot of red. So I submit to you that this is the lens through which I look at different capital things, and I don't think it's a pretty picture personally. I think it either is going to lead to incompletion of projects that we maybe want to do, or an overburdening of the taxpayer. And so that leads into the affordability concept, which right now is being tackled from every single direction, from a planning and development zoning type perspective, but not from the very core basic, which is that property tax bill is the one that never stops and seems to never abate. So I wanted to submit it. The last thing I want to say is that in committee we talked about potentially taking this to committee. As the author, I didn't feel like more conversation would yield a lot, and so I just wanted it to be out there in the interest of transparency and completeness. But I'm personally totally fine with the receive and file. It was my work, frankly. If other councillors feel differently, I'm happy to listen. So I yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zeid. So the motion on Communication 572 is to receive and file. Any further discussion? Councillor McCauley?
Yeah, I was part of the discussion. I'd like to thank the councillor for putting together this synopsis as to how we look at capital improvement as it relates to our CIP plan. The main real difference between the finance directors and the councillors is really the starting number, where the finance director takes it from assuming 2.5% growth at the top of every year in the levy limit and works his way down. The numbers are slightly different along the way. It's usually, I think it was on page 6 of the CIP, which we'll talk about later on today. But it still comes down to the same type of analysis that goes on here. And it is a bit of a word of caution to us all that, this year we fully funded 100% of the operational requests of all the departments in Newburyport, schools included. And the pie is only so big, and what happens is that there's not a lot left over here for longer-term capital improvement plans that go on there. Some of our projects that we've done in the past have had some cost overruns, not through mismanagement, just we had budgeted $6 million, it became $9 million. We budgeted $4 million, it became $6 million, et cetera, along the way. And that has taken a toll on our ability to bond in future years going forward. So when we look at fiscal year 2025, there's nothing here that we can look at long-term that actually fits within our levy along the way and within having a balanced budget. And we can't spend free cash on that because you just can't in doing so. So we're setting ourselves up for 2026, and when you look at that, there's $3.5 million worth of projects, according to this, that can be done. That's not $3.5 million of spending level, but that's what the total value of the project is. And I think we should take note of that, because something's got to give. Either we've got to work on cutting our spending up front to free up operational funds to be able to spend in long-term capital improvements, or the projects are going to have to get smaller along the way, and we're going to have to do them in multiple phases as opposed to a complete type of project. And so while this doesn't solve anything, it does put a different spin on some things that I think we should all, as a word of caution again, we should all take note of, and as we approach our fiscal duties when we come up, raising taxes, raises, things like that are coming down the pike, we need to make sure that we understand the implications of that going forward. So thank you, I yield.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion to receive and file? Okay. Hearing none, I think we can do a roll call on this. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Okay, thank you, 11-0. Next, communication,
What?
574.
Proposed bike share pilot program.
Motion to refer to community services.
Second. And community And committee of the whole?
Okay. Committee, COTW as well?
C.
Okay, yep. All right, thank you, Councillor Z.
So the reason I asked to remove this is I actually wanted to have a conversation with amongst the council, if I could, Mr. President. I'm not asking this question of staff, I'm asking it of the council. I'm trying to suss out what we believe our role is in this because residents asked us to support this, but this came in as a communication. There is no financial analysis, there's no order to say utilize the space or sign a lease. In public comment, it was stated that the Livable Streets Group has a vendor they may choose to use, which is an interesting way to put it. And so I don't understand. My point in asking this is I'm not going to oppose it going to committee, but this isn't something that can be approved just from simple form factor. It's a communication. So in the end, it will be received and filed. And I know that the new sport in town is to avoid the city council, but actually we do exist for a reason. And so if the council doesn't see a role for itself, I'd like to know myself so I can decide how much time to invest. But the questions would be obvious. There would be land use implications potentially. I mean, they've identified several spots. There are financial implications. There's mention of a gap. There's a few numbers. There's mention of utilization of city resources such as DPS, which I believe is how we got into the parklets issue in the first place, just be a little bit from DPS. So there's that, and then of course there's the public works and safety aspect where these bikes potentially are going to be used, you know, across the city and on public streets and so forth. So I'm asking my colleagues specifically, do you see orders coming out of this, or is this a, hey, we're letting the council know and then it will be what it will be with or without us? Thank you.
Good questions. Several hands here. We'll go Councillor Preston, then Macaulay, then Khan.
Thanks. It's a fair point. And I think, and again, as the chair of community services, these are certainly things that we can discuss. I mean, first blush, for me, at least, it does talk a lot about acceptance of the grants. That there certainly is a funding shortfall, but I think these are all things that we can certainly very fairly bring up in the committee. However, hopefully the mayor is actually listening. I know he usually listens from his office, but you know, I got a nod of office from the chief of staff today. He's not coming back for 19th or 17th, something. He wouldn't be here by the 16th, let's put it that way. So I'm really hopeful that the administration could send somebody to the community services meeting so that we could have someone from the administration that could really help us to outline these sorts of where we should expect the council's involvement in all of this. But it's reasonable questions to ask, but hopefully things we can handle in committee.
Can you remind me, what time is that meeting on the 16th?
It is 5 o'clock on the 16th.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Macaulay?
Yeah, I coincidentally, I had the same type of questions, right? And so I don't have an opposition for it to go to community services and council of the whole, but I do have some questions about whether we're sending it to the right place or not. And again, I don't have reservations on that, because if it's parks only, locations will be in the park. Is that assuming, for example, the bikes are only going to be used in the parks and on the rail trail? And if they're going to be used on city streets and city sidewalks, then it becomes a public works and safety issue because it's a safety matter. And if it's simply about funding and accepting grants and finding shortfalls and things like that, then it's a budget and finance issue. So are there orders? There's at least 3 different orders that would probably come out of this. Never mind assigning personnel, having the administration assign personnel to be able to run it as a quote-unquote city service. So I think, you know, this memo is good in saying generally here's where we are, but the devil's in the details. And, you know, the detail I took away is we have a program that, you know, is going to generate like $6,000 in revenue, but might cost somewhere between $40,000 and $70,000 a year in running it. And I'm sure I'm wrong on that, but that's what the numbers tell me right now that go forward. So already there's a gap and shortfall, and I'm sure they're going to work through that, and it's not a comment, but, you know, so the question is, are we sending it to the right place? My gut is saying, yeah, we probably are, but we need to have a robust conversation, which is why I asked for the committee of the whole to be able to do that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Khan?
Thank you, Council President. I'm just rising in kind of in support of the way we're going to be talking about this. I think one of the things that I like about the proposal is that it is a a couple of entities that we have already been involved in the city, Newburyport Livable Streets, which I know many of you probably have followed or gone to some of their meetings or have heard about some of the efforts there. A lot of it is talking about current infrastructure that already has bikes. You know, we see them, we ride them, so it's not like we're creating a new type of transportation for the city. So I would hope our streets can manage bikes, because they are right now. But what I like about this in terms of, and I appreciate the question, is what's the role of the city council? I think that's why the conversation and the discussions as we talk about the proposals, look at how other communities have also integrated it. There are things there that maybe we could see where are the points that are going to be critical for the council maybe to address, whether it's through even having Traffic Safety Advisory Council, TSAC, or where would it go that people feel like there is a need for more conversations, you know. And I will say, and I'm sure others here have used these in other cities. We just got back from Georgetown and in DC, and we actually used the system. And I think what I found the most interesting is if you don't have a helmet, you know, how then if you use one, is there a way to have helmets available and things like that. So I think there's a lot that I'm looking forward to in the committee conversation to see what are the elements where there's some learnings, and not just for the council, across the board. I think the councilor from Ward 5 has aptly pointed out, you know, the public safety aspect, but again, I looked at TSAC, you know, there's several factors of departments in the city that could also contribute there. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. I know, did we say committee of the whole on this one?
We did.
Okay,
yes.
Great. So I know I will be there, and I look forward to the conversations on what I will be listening to see what are the next steps that we can do in the city council that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Further council comment, discussion? Councillor Zeid?
Yeah, I just want to put I guess I should answer my own question from my perspective, from what little it may be worth, but it's obvious to me that there's council involvement here. It's obvious. It's not questionable. I'm asking my colleagues because I'm trying to bring this to the forefront, the role of the council, which I think has been greatly diminished this year, and that's frustrating to me. What's the difference between regular people riding their own bike on the street and us either directly or in partnership providing them with a bike? Liability. That's the answer to the question. So these issues are to be dealt with. The public way is the city council's jurisdiction. I've been on the council long enough to know that there's lots of debate about where the line is. But you know, it's gotten so blurred to me to the point that even things that seem obviously like the city council's role, the public way, zoning, signing agreements with third parties. We can't even rent a ballpark to a Pioneer League without the approval of the city council, is getting lost. And so that's my view, but I'm one of 11, and that's why I'm asking. So my suggestion or hope is in community services and with committee of the whole, the focus is on what orders need to come out. And my questions are all, of course, around finance and liability and who's going to hold the insurance on all this stuff and who's going to deal with the bikes in the middle of the street, who will carry those costs so that we don't end up either in a bad place or carrying additional costs that were not anticipated. And usually it's soft costs in the form of time and things like that that get lost out into the budget. So I'll yield with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Motion is to refer this to Community Services and Committee of the Whole.
Correct. Made by Councilor Zeid, seconded by... Second. I can't remember.
Okay. All right. Since it's a referral to committee, we can do a roll call. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Okay. Thank you.
So next, Mr. President, we have the application 228, emergency preamble in the block party at Barton Street.
So motion collectively to waive the rules, approve application 228 emergency preamble.
No, I don't live there.
Okay. So motion collectively to waive the rules, approve application 228 emergency preamble and application 228 underlying.
Second. Okay, motion made and seconded. Councillor Zeid.
I want to apologize for this. It was one of those, the resident reached out to me basically right after the last council meeting, of course, and there's not sufficient time to have another meeting. They have had this block party. It's in my ward. They've had this block party a number of years in a row, and it's, as you know, typically it has run well, and so they asked for this grace, and I offered to sponsor an emergency preamble. I hope you can see your way to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Okay, I think we'll do a roll call on this.
Roll call on approving collectively the emergency preamble and the order its application itself.
Waiver of the rules.
And the waiver of the rules. Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Granis? Yes. Councilor Harmon? Yes. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
And Council President Cameron?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Zede. Seeing no transfers, second reading appointments.
We have 3 appointments, 509 Jill Gross, 3 Payson Street, to the Cultural Council, all till 9/15/2027. Appointment 510, Cynthia Sharpman, reappointment to the Cultural Council, and 511 Monica Bartley to the same Cultural Council until 9/15/2027.
Motion to approve collectively?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call on a second reading.
Roll call on the collective 3 appointments. Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Granis? Yes. Councilor Harmon?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane? Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
And Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Thank you.
Those 2 orders.
First order is the agreement and letter of indemnification.
Point of order, I'd just like to help out here collectively.
Yeah.
Is I'd like to suggest order 595, letter of indemnification, 596 licensed contractor, and order 601 surveillance cameras to go to Public Works and Safety.
Second.
And I'll tack on, if I may, 597, grant acceptance 140K FY25 state earmarks to Budget and Finance. 598, grant acceptance 110,000 and change, Green Communities, Budget and Finance. And order 599, loan order 1.006 million, Plumber Springs Bridge, Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole.
Second.
So that leaves order 600.
And 600, of course, Budget and Finance, sorry, yep, and Budget and
Okay,
Finance as well.
great, thank you. So just going in order, 595 Public Works and Safety, 596 Public Works and Safety, 597 Budget and Finance, 598 Budget and Finance, 599 Budget and Finance Committee of the Whole, 600 Budget and Finance, and 601 PWS. Thank you. So that will be one.
First and seconded by?
We'll have it a second.
Ben.
Ben.
First.
Thank you.
I know we're just referring to committee, but anything loan order, probably just do a roll call on the whole thing. We can do that quickly, just for the heck of it.
So collectively including the loan order, Mr. President?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Wright?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Donahue?
Yes.
Councilor Granis?
Yes.
Councilor Harmon?
Yes.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor Lane?
Yes.
Councilor McCauley?
Yes.
Councilor Preston?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinances.
First ordinance is the ordinance 178, which is the affordable housing property tax exemption pursuant to Chapter 59, Section 50.
Motion to refer to Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Could we add collectively 179?
179?
That's
Zone-
going to be enough.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So,
Who's still on 178?
One vote.
okay, so 178, Budget and Finance Committee of the Whole. Any discussion? Councilor Hand.
Yes, just a heads up, this is one that the Housing Coalition had pointed this out, that last year the state allowed municipalities, as of July of this year, to allow tax exemptions for folks who are developing and running low-income or affordable housing. And they gave us specific rules. It could be by income, by what they're renting it to, and by how the taxes are actually set up for the exemption, actually. So we put in, for this one, 60% AMI, but I look forward to the discussion in committee to see if that's something that we want to pursue in Newburyport. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so motion on the floor is Budget and Finance Committee of the Whole for ordinance 178. We could do a voice vote on this, I suppose.
Yep.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Okay, thank you.
Next is ordinance 179, zoning amendment, ADUs.
Motion to send to Budget, Planning and Development Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Any discussion? Councillor Khan?
Great, thank you, Council President. Yeah, I want to take a few minutes to introduce this because it is an ordinance change, and I do want to recognize and make sure the public and folks know that we are sending this to committee, and there will be a planning board. As folks know, any zoning ordinance has a process, and a process that has a calendar time associated with it once the public hearing is posted and held. One of the things, we kind of knew this was coming for accessory dwelling units. And just to remind folks here, we have something already that is in our zoning. In our zoning currently, they were called in-law apartments. And at that time, I believe like 157 communities at the time when we did the in-law apartments zoning were jumped on this to provide some kind of controls on housing that is on a single family or a single or two family. There's a debate on what's like a residential kind of property, but to have additional housing types there. One of the things then that we see, and this is why that memo that I wanted to make sure we keep front and center, is that there's a section that talks about the state mandate that was approved on August 6th of this year. What the state has done is it has actually kind of codified or made legislated for the whole state of Massachusetts that you could no longer have accessory dwelling units only be available to when you say in-law, meaning it's a family member, and instead they should be available for rental for anyone. Along those state kind of, I guess you could say, rulings, and this is what you'll see on the first page of the memo that we also sent to Planning and Development, is that the ADU must be an accessory. So it can't be the primary, but on a single family lot, if it's there, it's a secondary house. So what does that mean? And that's kind of what this ordinance is. What we're trying to do is establish that there is already a process that triggers certain controls. And one of the things that the sponsor and myself were really trying to be cognizant of is being mindful of what the state is dictating and what the state is saying. Now, as those of us who've now been writing zoning and laws, a lot is for interpretation. So if you try to find like an FAQ, like what is really, what are the key areas that the state is saying, you really don't get a lot of guidance on it, because the way the language is written, the main thing that's being kind of dictated, or I'm saying dictated, but kind of allowed, is that you cannot have them just be for family members if you're going to have a rental of an accessory property. There's definitions of accessory, whether they're attached to a primary home or they're detached. So you can see that there's a lot of elements of what this housing could look like. So one of the things that I would say from a process perspective, when you look at this ordinance and you're wondering who wrote it, Councillor Harmon and Councillor Khan are not like, we're zoning experts. I mean, we could look at other communities and put something together. Our kind of mindset, and I'm sure my co-sponsor might say a few words, is that there was some efforts already done. The Housing Coalition group that has been formed, they have a legislative group, and we had some folks there. Former Councillor Eigerman, too, was part of that. And there was that was not a bat, but that's a very large moth that just flew in. And it went right for you, Council President. Okay. There was already something that was available for us to look at that had a perspective of this is what it could be. And then the planning department had their vision of what we could do. I would say what the councilor and I did is we actually sat down and looked at it from the perspective of, as we talk to residents, as we look at neighborhoods and see what are some of the factors that can really maybe be areas that we want to put some controls in where we can, where the state won't say you can't do that. Because one of the things that's going to be very critical in our ordinance is review by an attorney. Because there will be areas that if we want to put special permits, because the main thing that the state has said is that this has to be done by right. And what that means is The developments don't need to go through those, the public kind of hearings that are done with special permits. However, we did put in some things that we felt was really something that we'd enjoy in the debate when this goes to committee. Site plan review is something that we did think would be a good idea, especially for the detached units, which is really the only place we're putting that. So I wanted to explain a little bit of what you see here, and that's why the memo was so important for me, for folks to see, because you'll see what the state is saying. You'll also see how the planning department maybe feels about some of the aspects in here and what will be maybe the salient points of the debate of the councilors. More in terminology that is not, might be lost in the ordinance language. So that way it was really critical to have some kind of language that you could tie the ordinance with actually kind of what is it saying. So that's all I wanted to say. I want to make sure I introduce this also for the public, for folks to understand that this is coming before us and will be part of our key critical conversations in planning and development. And the last thing I will say is, as we've been seeing with things from the state, is there is a compliance period. There is a time when when the state has asked that communities comply by, and I also want to share that with folks too, and that's going to be by the end of February that we need to have at least a first reading done on this. So again, timing is, I think this is a good time because it gives us plenty of time for that, where we're not hopefully going to be rushing to make that end of February. At least I hope not. I hope I did not jinx us here. But I look forward to the debate, the conversation, and if there's any other questions on at least what you see before you guys here, feel free to reach out to either myself or my co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Khan, for the explanation. Councilor Harmon.
Thank you. Thank you to my co-sponsor for explaining this very well, so I will be brief. I just want to add, I think there's a lot of discussion around the role of the council tonight in most of our meetings, and I think Councilor Khan and I took very seriously the role of the council in understanding what the state was saying, understanding what housing advocates and experts were saying, and understanding what the planning department was saying, and trying to do what we think is the right thing for Newburyport. And I think we welcome the debate that will happen in committee, and that this legislation and zoning will get better based on the input and the feedback that we gather through the process. But I think we tried to put a first step forward that we felt was both in the spirit of increasing housing inventory. We know there's a housing crisis and an affordability crisis, but also layering in protections and process that would allow us to have the proper controls over that in our community. I will just, if you will allow, provide a personal note, which is that my husband, as you all know, who's from Newburyport, grew up off of Turkey Hill, and his grandmother, when his grandfather passed away unexpectedly, was able to build one of, our realtor told us, one of the few full accessory dwelling units at the time called in-law apartments in Newburyport. And she was able to spend the better part of 12 years of her life living with her family, attending family dinners, providing childcare. And I think not only is this the potential for us to increase rental inventory, it's the potential for us to create opportunities for families that may be in transition to stay on their properties where you may be downsizing, but you have kids who want to move back to Newburyport, a story that I think we've all heard. If you're able to convert your main home for your kids to move into, and you could easily transition into a smaller area, or if you have an aging parent, this is a real opportunity for us to make it easier for people to do with their homes and their properties, things that I think will help make a richer community, not only just for the sake of increasing rental stock. So again, thank you for the strong introduction, and to all of us for considering this, and I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is to refer to Planning and Development and Committee of the Whole.
Correct.
And I think we could, as a referral, we could just do a voice vote on this.
We could.
If you say we could, we can then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, thank you.
Next, we have 3 salary amendments, Mr. President.
Motion to collectively refer to Budget and Finance and Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Okay.
Would you like
180, amend mayor's salary. 181, amend city council salary. And 182, amend school committee salary.
Okay.
Okay.
Want anything read into the record?
Yeah, if you could read them in for the record, that'd be good.
Budget and Finance or General Government?
So budget and
Historically,
finance.
these have gone to budget, but it can be whatever you
So
want.
it's straight budget and finance, committee of the
And
whole?
committee of the whole, yeah.
So again, not again, initially, ordinance 180, salary of elected officials. This relates to the mayor. Commencing in January 2026, continuing thereafter, the annual salary of the mayor shall be, we're striking 102,750 and inserting 125,000 plus $3,000 annual expense allowance and $5,100 annual travel allowance. That is 180. 181 reads as follows. It's the City Council. Commencing with the inauguration of the council in January 2026 and continuing thereafter, the annual salary of each councilor except the president shall be $11,000. That's moving from $9,000 to $11,000. Commencing with the inauguration of the council January 2026, continuing thereafter, the annual salary of the council president was $11,000. That proposal is to make it $13,000. These are all coming in as sponsored by Councilor Zeid. Right? And the last is the salary of the school committee commencing on January 1st, 2026. The annual salary of each school committee member, except the mayor and vice chair, shall be, was $3,000, it's moving to $4,000. Commencing on January 1st, 2026, the annual salary of the vice chair, instead of $3,600, would be $5,000. And that is it in a nutshell.
Okay, so motion has been made, Budget and Finance Committee of the Whole. That was seconded by?
I'll second it.
Councilor Lane. Any discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Okay.
Next, Mr. President, amending Chapter 12, Section 12-10, surveillance having to do with cameras.
Motion to send this to refer to Public Works and Safety.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Okay, motion made to refer to Public Works and Safety. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, that passes. Thank you. Committee items.
Motion to approve Order 586, revised FY 25 to 29 CIP order.
Second.
Thank you. This is, Order 586 is the revised CIP that came in July. So the committee met on August 15th. The committee discussed the CIP that was resubmitted. There was discussion about the need to pass something, to have something on file, and for potential future changes to the process and the way things are presented. Councillor Zeid presented an alternative idea for the CIP that we previously discussed in the communication, but that was not formally proposed as an amendment. We then had further discussion about how potentially to continue the conversation in future iterations. Throughout the conversation, there did end up being one amendment, and that amendment was motioned by Councillor Khan and seconded by Councillor Harmon, and that was to insert at the Ward 5 Councillor's request a new project called the Hale Street pedestrian walkway that was included in the packet for your review. So that was taken in by motion, and then it was voted on to add to the CIP by a vote of 2-1. I was the dissenting vote. The total project cost is $875, and then there's a narrative that was written, and then the 5-year, and then the check boxes were for general fund debt, state and federal grant, and CPA grant. So that was inserted. And I know it's not customary, but in the end, the committee did take an actual vote on a recommendation on the CIP. Typically, it's sent out without recommendation in typical times. But we did send it, we did take a motion to recommend it by, recommend approval with the amendment. That was again motioned by Councillor Khan and seconded by Councillor Harmon. It was a vote of 2-1. I was again the dissenting vote, and that is Order 586 for your consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion. Councillor Preston.
Thank you. So I am going to again vote no on this, and I would like to explain why. At the June 25th budget vote, I was clear that I was voting no on the CIP because I was looking for prioritization of the project. I'm not looking for high, medium, low priority. I am looking for priority of the projects vis-a-vis one another. On June 27th, 2 days after our vote, I met with the Chief of Staff to better explain why I voted no on both the budget as well as the CIP. I was again clear with the Chief of Staff that, what I was really looking for was a prioritization of the major projects vis-a-vis one another. I further let him know that my reasoning behind that is that the prioritization of the projects allows for us to better plan for the major projects that are in our pipeline. I further explained that I really wanted to find a way to build a permanent home for RYS, but struggle with the cost of the project in light of the $76 million for water sewer infrastructure, as well as $30 million for a fire headquarters as examples. And that prioritization of the projects could help me find a way to vote yes on RYS. On July 8th, at the City Council meeting where the mayor reintroduced the CIP with the amendment, a simple amendment to remove the one project that caused the recusal of one of the councillors. The mayor had stated that he had not gotten any feedback from city councillors on the CIP. I pointed out that I had given feedback at the budget vote on the 25th, as well as at my meeting with the chief staff on the 27th, and again restated that I was looking for prioritization of projects vis-a-vis each other. On August 3rd, I went on the radio with Local Pulse, I think we all know Joe well, to further clarify my vote in the budget and the CIP. I yet again explained that what I was looking for was prioritization of the projects to allow us to better plan for the major projects in the pipeline. Further explaining again that I am trying to find a way to build a home for RYS, but struggle with the projects that are in the pipeline, and how, with the lack of prioritization of those projects, that I really struggle to go through that. On August 14th, I sent an email to the mayor, the chief of staff, the chair of budget and finance, as well as the council president on the CIP order that is in front of us, because I was going to be on vacation where the meeting was going to be discussed and therefore wasn't able to be there. In that email, I stated, and I'm quoting myself here, I realize that I'm at risk of being extremely redundant, since I had had a conversation with Chief of Staff immediately after the budget vote, had a discussion with the mayor and the Florida Council, and discussed with the host of Local Pulse on August 3rd, but I want to formalize my input. I am a strong supporter of the CIP as I find it to be a valuable planning tool. However, I voted against the CIP because there is no prioritization of projects. I realize that there is a high, medium, low prioritization assigned to each project. What I'm looking for is the priority of the projects vis-a-vis each other. In other words, I'm still quoting my email. In other words, what I'm looking for is the administration to prioritize projects against one another. I'm not looking for the entirety of the CIP projects to be prioritized, but rather the large projects. That could be done by prioritizing projects 1 through 10, or all of the projects above $500,000 as an example. I realize that this is not an easy exercise, nor will be a popular exercise. However, I feel that these are exactly the kinds of hard decisions that the people of Newburyport expect and deserve from their elected officials. If the administration is willing to prioritize the CIP in this manner, I would happily vote to pass the CIP. The response from the administration was crickets. I did not even get the respect of a thanks for your email response from the administration. I assume they did nothing but push delete on my email. You know, we as councillors were often, criticized for being divisive. You know, I don't know what else I could have done to be clear about what I was looking for from the administration on this. And I got absolutely nothing back. Complete dead air from the administration. And I don't see how that's done working with me. I'm trying really hard here to work with the administration, and I am getting absolutely nothing. Clearly, the intent of the administration was to just revise the CIP, to get rid of the recusal, and then shove the CIP down the throat of merely the majority, the very close, well, actually, I guess in the end, it was a tie vote. There were 5 of us that said no to the CIP. There has been no material change to the CIP other than to get a recusal off the table so that it can be passed here tonight. I find that really divisive from the administration. I expect more, and the people of Newburyport should expect more. That's why I'm going to vote no on the CIP again tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Khan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor, for explaining the vote, which is very helpful. The one thing I do want to, we're a body that wants to work together, tries to understand and realize that if there are some things that we want to let the administration know that might help us, I think that's, that's what we should all be doing. The one question I have for my colleague, though, is, and I think this is kind of how I've always seen the CIP, is, there's the high, medium, low prioritization, but then there's also the kind of the fiscal year at which the funding will start. So I did this exercise of ranking them to get what maybe they're not verbally telling you, but what the numbers are telling you. And it does give a little bit of a picture, but we know it changes, right? So I think maybe that's what, you're probably wondering, what we're seeing this year, when will it maybe change next year? Will the next CIP maybe move around what this CIP is saying? So I think one of the things that we're learning with the CIP process, just so that we don't repeat next year the same, kind of the same frustrations, I really am hoping that one of the things we tried to do, this might have been pre-pandemic or maybe during the pandemic, we may have been on Zoom, but we tried to prioritize at least to, okay, so for the administration, what might help them is we maybe look at the last 2 or 3 CIP projects and share from ourselves what we think are important. Now, it could vary because what we think is 11 voices might feel very different. But what it could do, and this is where, again, I think it goes aligned with what the Budget and Finance Chair was sharing with what they thought would look good. That's almost like one snapshot. This is kind of what I would like to see from the CIP, although I know there's more to it. I don't mean to simplify it, but there were some example projects in there. And I don't want to miss these dialogues. Let's just let them go in the ether, and we then all just sit here and say, okay, fine, when can we leave? I don't want to do that. I really want us to roll up our sleeves and try to make some progress here because, we don't like seeing the frustration. And I hope it doesn't seem like we're just checking off saying, yeah, do what you want. I think we all come at it with a different philosophy and maybe satisfaction. And I think part of that will differ. So what I'm proposing, because I do think that the Chair of Budget and Finance aptly said, I may have said this last year too, and we did nothing. So I am publicly saying that maybe, and not being Chair of Budget and Finance, however, in November, when we do our joint school committee conversations, why not even have, and I know we've talked about retreats. We normally do them in the beginning of the year, but, and gosh, not that I'm saying November, December is better for a retreat, but maybe if we do a cookie swap, it might get more people. But maybe we do some type of a retreat, holiday cookie swap. No, I'm not saying cookie swap. But something where we could find, do the high school library or somewhere where you can eat. And we sit down and have the conversation. Because I think we have a lot of data between what was shared during the RYS conversation of how to fund it. Here's some things debt coming off, debt that's going to be coming in. Why not just have the conversation? I'm not saying it's going to satisfy us, but at least we tried. And from that, we can all maybe learn a little bit about where we each are coming from. You just hear many of us saying, RYS, RYS, forget water sewer. No, we're not saying that. There's a lot of things where we want to almost do all of it. And I think I said before, monopoly money. And I don't mean it to sound like that, but sometimes we sit here and we think to ourselves, yeah, Hill Street. We don't want those kids to be coming down a very dangerous road. We want them to get to school and talk about safe routes to school. Folks in Turkey Hill and that side, it's very dangerous for those kids. So we just added that. Here we talked about the CIP. We're really struggling with, how are we funding this? How is it going to reflect on the taxpayers? But we, as you heard, 2 to 1, we wanted to see this Hale Street project because it's something we've seen in past CIPs. So, but how do we do that prioritization? I think the one thing we could control is this group here, where everyone sits and talks. And I don't mean to go on so long about it, but I just feel like there's a lot that folks have said that I just want you to know it's not missed on me. But I do want us to do some action for it. And I looked to Council President that maybe that would be a signal to maybe email everyone and see when we could do that retreat to have a really good conversation about what we know is coming financially and where those prioritizations sit amongst us. And that's one thing we could control and pass that and invite, the mayor to attend and listen in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lane.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. However, I want to push it past a cookie swap to a town meeting style. I've always had a problem with the CIP, and yeah, it is monopoly money. It used to be my favorite drill because you can just move money around magically and think that anything's going to happen. To the Councillor Large's point, I think she is spot on with having a priority to give you just some real life situational. The CIP, if you look at the building of the garage versus the building of NYS, if there was some prioritization, at least from what's been spoken in this room about whose priorities are where, I believe the garage was put in place the same time NYS was stuffed in a condemned building. So, to the councilor's point, it's very important to know what the priorities of the entire city, not just us who sit here, not just from the mayor's office, not from chief of staff, for the city to know what they want is so important. We wouldn't have a problem right now with NYS if we had some order in the CIP and some real life meat and potatoes of when we're going to do these things, not just stuff them in. And I gave the example of why I voted no the last time. I've watched the police dispatch center get kicked down the road and now is double the cost since before COVID. I think everything is, you know, I said after COVID we should have just blown this thing up and started fresh. I still think we should start fresh and have that kind of meeting. Bring your cookies if you like, but with a town, like a town meeting. Just put it out there, let people come. We did an economic development meeting at the senior center that I thought was great, where they broke out different groups and what would you like to see in town? Where should we have our priority for economic development? I think that this really should go through that type of process at this point. This has been in place, like I said, before COVID. Everything's kind of flipped upside down. We're having a tough time getting projects to go through that are very important now because we didn't have prioritization, because we didn't have, you know, what do we want to do next? And what does that, how does that implicate the budget, and where are we going to be in terms of taxes? I mean, we're, in 4 years, it's certainly the landscape has changed across the board. So that would be my recommendation, is to dovetail on the at-large councilor's idea and just have a town meeting. And I guess I'm asking the administration to put that together. I'm still voting no for this, just so you know. So.
Councillor Z, then Councillor McCauley.
Thank you. I have a couple comments I want to make as well. So, you know, I just want to first start by the importance of capital. You know, second to human resources, it is, I mean, first of all, numerically, it's essentially the second or equal importance. That's number one. And it's easily, you know, one of the largest categories, one of the largest expenditures of time having been taken by staff and council to approve. So when you start with that fundamental, that this isn't an exercise, it's critically important for an organization of this scale and this size, and for an organization that has no time horizon. Cities don't think about 10 years or 20 years, they think about forever, because we always assume that this is a going concern. It will be here always and forever. And so that's the lens with capital. So if you come to this conversation with that sort of level of gravity, you quickly come to the Budget and Finance meeting, about which a lot of hullabaloo was made and nobody came, frankly, whether it was pretty sparsely attended by both the council and the public. You realize that the fundamental disagreement is many councillors are okay with a capital improvement list, not a capital improvement plan. There's a difference. What we have before us is a great capital improvement list, and if that was the standard by which we were measuring, I think it would probably pass 11-0, because a list does just that. It lists out the projects. But it doesn't undertake the second part, which is what actually makes it a plan, which is to sit down and sharpen your pencil and start to realize that all of these things cannot be done. I have shown that to you in my proposal. You're welcome to challenge me on my assumptions, triple my assumptions on growth, and you will find the stupid thing still comes out red. We have failed to have that conversation, and so what the several speakers before me, the at-large councillor, said is she doesn't want a list, she wants a plan. And for some reason this has like become so difficult in semantics to understand what the difference is, but it's obvious in my opinion. And this is not a plan, it's a list. The counter arguments are, frankly, mind-boggling. Not having, so if you walked up State Street and a resident stopped you and said, hey, what are we going to do on Capitol in the next year? And you can't answer the question, that's fiscal malpractice. That's what it is. If an $80 million corporation like Newburyport cannot say in the next year what and on what it will spend on capital, it's a joke. It's not acceptable. It's not votable. I think tonight, I hope, and I know that this was revised with the purpose of getting the sole extra vote from the recusal, but I'm hoping somebody else hears me and flips a vote around and this thing fails again 6-5 because it deserves to fail again 6-5. Second argument is now isn't the time. I don't understand that. We're going to have another meeting to solve what we couldn't solve, and we just underwent a multi-month process around the capital improvement plan. We could not even get on the same page as far as what this thing is supposed to be. In the last meeting, there were 5 who wanted a plan and there were 5 who wanted a list. I personally think it's that simple. Tonight, I think it's the worst kept secret in Newburyport. There will probably be 6 who can live with a list, and they'll say that we'll get it better next year and maybe we should have a meeting about meetings, and that we'll come to a different conclusion. I cannot ascribe to that. The second one that's really frustrating is that, you know, the city council needs to wait for the administration to give us some more guidance and some more paperwork. One of the things that was really abrasive to me in committee was, you know, my analysis being met with, well, can we get something from the finance director? The finance director has presented you with his view, his opinion, his projection. That's fine. Other people are entitled to opinions too, just as with ADUs. The planning department can have one view and the council can have another, and staff cannot supplant the city council. We are the people. They are not the people. It's really not that difficult to understand. So I've tried to break up these arguments that now isn't the time. I don't know, if you don't do it with the capital improvement plan, then when do you do it? You have it in a different meeting, and that meeting is different. I've tried to dispel the notion that there is no other approach that could be undertaken. I've shown that. Flexibility is the other argument here often, that, oh, it's a fluid plan. Well, actually, capital shouldn't be that fluid. It's not meant to be liquid. You're supposed to decide what you're going to do so that the truck doesn't break down on the side of the road, the building doesn't collapse or get condemned at the last second, and you actually are making the amendments and investments, pardon me, that you need to. The bottom line is really uncomfortable. Things need to come off this list, period. If you don't like that, if that makes you uncomfortable, then please understand that whether we actively remove them from the list or we just let it happen by, say, for example, doing a Plumber Springs Bridge for $1.006 million after kind of floundering around with it for several years, it's going to happen, because that's what happens with scarce resources. You only have this much, you've got to do this much, some plans are going to get squeezed out. I'd rather take an active role in deciding which ones of those projects get squeezed out and which ones don't. I do want to address what was referred to in the last capital improvement plan debate as stinky cheese, and that was the Newburyport Youth Services Building. A couple of references were made to it. I don't know anybody, resident or councilor, who doesn't want to finally see some resolution to that issue. I personally have put in numerous proposals. I have one in Budget and Finance that I can get zero traction on, which is fun, but I've tried, and I've shown that in my analysis that when you plug that number in, you can see out. But what frustrates me is every issue in the last at least 2 years, financial issue, has been looked at in the lens of what does it mean for NRYS. The city is much broader and bigger than one department. We've got to look at everything and over that long time horizon, and I think councilors should, I hope, be introspective about that. And the irony of the situation is if we actually had a plan and not a list, we would know what we could invest in NRYS, and we could move on and maximize what the dollars that we've agreed we can spend, and we can maximize the value of it instead of arguing endlessly about money we don't have and we can't get. So I want to close where I started. Capital is the gift or the curse that we leave to the next generation. I think in a lot of ways we were left with a lot of curses because we had previous 50 years where the roads were flexible. We were flexible on the roads. We're not going to pave them. The sidewalks, we were flexible. Buildings, we were flexible on. Schools, we were flexible on. Roofs, we were flexible on. Everything was flexible to the degree that nothing got done. And when the money dried up, specifically free cash, which it always does, it's cyclical, we were left with no spending. So we really do need to do better. I think, again, everybody knows tonight's proposal is going to pass. I think you're going to hear hopes and promises for the future, but this CIP is actually what came from the hopes and promises from 3 or 4 years ago, having sat through those conversations, and it's still not any better. So I'm hoping that we can, you know, the best course of action tonight would be for this to fail and to send that strong message that we want a plan and not a list. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Zede, Councilor McCauley.
Thank you, Council President. Just a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to thank the council, the committee for accepting Hale Street as a pedestrian walkway. Just as a note, I have put that on as a priority, and I have been working with the administration and looking for grants and other things to be able to pull that forward. We've been able to fund part of it with ARPA along the way. It's germane to the conversation, which is why I'm bringing it up. First of all, I do want to note to the at-large council of the disrespect that came from the administration. We have enough, we can't disrespect ourselves, right? We have enough people that want to bypass the council, not talk to the council, not involve the council in clearly things that our council matters. And I do think there's some angst in not what the role of the council is, but the council's authority as written in the charter, which is black and white, and we seem to sometimes ignore that going forward. And it's not a reasserting of that authority, but it does need to be respected along the way. And now we have outside volunteer groups that are disrespecting it. We have our own administration in some ways bypassing and disrespecting us, and we can't disrespect ourselves as we move forward going forward. The CIP funding piece, which is how I tied this back into it, on page 10 of the original document, you don't necessarily have to refer to it, but I'm just giving it as a point of reference, is a mirror copy of something that Councilor Zede and we had spoken about earlier today. It's the finance director's version of what was submitted earlier. Obviously, the numbers are a little different here based upon some assumption sets based upon policy. And that's where I want to go to, because the policy on here says, well, the fiscal policy, which is clearly in our purview, says that we can afford some things if we go to 4.5% of general fund revenue. Well, we haven't made that decision yet. That's our decision to make. That's not the director or anyone else, and no disrespect to them. They can make recommendations and they can show us some things. But those are our decisions to make, and that will tell us what we can and can't have for a budget for dollar amounts. I want to relate a quick story here. When I first came on the council, I was dragged into a meeting by my more experienced peers, and it had to do with CIP, and it had to do with the fact that the numbers worked out that there was exactly $10 million that could be projects that equal $10 million that could be bonded in my first year. And those projects were $6 million for the fire station and $4 million for Phillips Drive. And those were council priorities. They weren't administration priorities. Administration was very supportive when we brought them up, but they were council priorities because that's how we decided to do that. If we had known that the fire station was going to be $9 million, they'd still be in the old station. That's how tight we were running our money. So there were overruns, and that has impacted our ability to bond long-term these last couple of years. It has handicapped this administration. It has handicapped us in being able to build better things along the way because we're paying for some things from experts that told us it was $6 million and it's really $9 million. And we were told that Phillips Drive, for example, was $4 million plus $1 million of ARPA plus another $1.5 million of ARPA, and maybe we can get close to finishing that. So these overruns, we sometimes ask for more completeness in the projects that come forward. There's a reason for it, because it impacts future years' ability to spend going forward. It's not a criticism, it just happens. But we have to be alert to this. And this CIP, I'm not looking for the administration to tell me what their priorities are, because that happens during the budget process. Every department head tells us this project's important, and they rate them. They say this one over this one over this one, and we have that discussion in budget. But then when it comes, we just vote. We just vote on the list. We don't say, for example, we have projects that need to equal $1.7 million. We did that on the night before. We had $3 million of free cash to spend, and we spent that monopoly money in 35 minutes. We passed it out. One of the things that we passed on that was surveillance cameras. And there's not even a contract for the surveillance cameras. I asked for it 2 days ago. It was like, well, we're still figuring it out. We allocated $190,000 for surveillance cameras. There's not a contract. What are we talking about? That's monopoly money. We have $1.7 million, or we have $1 million of projects that we can work on. This is what we have to do. We have to get control of this budget and know what priorities we want to send going forward. So thank you very much for your patience and from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. So, you know, I propose something we can do, and what I'm hearing here is there's definitely a lot of feelings, and, you know, I'm trying to think through, like, what's the path ahead that can be proactive in this. But the one thing that I think some of the language or what we say here in the debate that kind of I need to rise and speak against is being told that if we support this, then we just don't care and we don't respect the process. And I'm pretty sure I heard that accurately. We could listen again. And I'm sorry, that's not collaboration to me. That's really almost telling us, if you support this, then you're in this category in my mind. And to me, collaboration is we listen to each other, we try to respect what the other is saying. And to give you an example, and I always point to the Massachusetts Municipal Association, silly me, but there are other communities in this state. Many of them have a very similar CIP, and I encourage folks to look. There's cities and there's towns, so they each have different processes. Towns actually make a CIP committee, and they do kind of like what the councillor from Ward 6 was talking about. It is like a town hall meetings where the community gets involved, and it's not done like here because we're in a city form of government. So I encourage us to think about, you know, like we do have every department, and I appreciate how the councillor from Ward 5 kind of said it. And that's really the crux of it. When we had the CIP discussion and how we aligned it during the budget hearings, before we actually covered CIP separately in its own conversation, which I wonder if that was probably better. What we did is we now grouped it in with the budget. So when DPS comes, before, when I first came on the council, and others might remember, March or April, was it March, that we would come and we would do a public hearing on the CIP, and then we would have a conversation about, with the department heads, like what were their priorities, why these things. But we thought, okay, if they're gonna just be coming again in a few months, why not group it together with the budget? Which I thought that was a good practice. What has happened though, and I think this is, we gotta call it out, we get burned out, right? Come budget time, we are in meetings till, you know, 10 o'clock. Well, actually, this time it's been 8. I have to say, it's been really like 2 hours and pretty much right on 2 hours. But what I will tell you, it's been 2 hours, but what has happened is, you know, you're going on line by line item, and then by the time we get to the CIP, you know, many of us are like, okay, what, now we have one more element to include here. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of a burnout happening. And if that's it, maybe we need to think of a way that we can get that CIP intel, which is developed in March. It is developed earlier. But with that said, that's one thing. I'm just sharing that with everyone, but really what it comes down to, every department, like in any corporation, every department will advocate for what they think is important. Somebody has to go in and say, you know, sorry, you're not going to get this year. You know, we're going to take these off. That is the mayor. And that, I think, is the message. And maybe that's what it is, because right now, every department can put their whole wish list. This is what I want. I think for us to know that that wish list was really looked at, and we come with a version, and with schools, I remember them saying, we took some things off, because it's really, you know, we asked them to move it to year 5, or, you know, like move it up ahead. You know, there's an art to this, and I guess what I'm saying is it's not going to be an easy fix. However, I do think the best way to start, though, is to really have a conversation dedicated on the process we have, and we have experience in it now. Many of us who've been on here have seen year by year by year. What can at least help this give us the answers that we need to make the decisions as we sit in these seats? And I do think, I'm the optimist, I do think that we could do it. I think we could come up with something that can work for us. We could, one of the things when the Budget and Finance Chair introduced their table of what they'd like to see, actually I was ready to make an amendment to the CIP, but I don't think there was an appetite at that time, but I was ready to do what we can, because it is a planning document. And that's something to remember, it's a plan. And those of you who start looking at other communities' CIP will see the plan is the plan because it's spread out over years. You know, it has. And so I will stop there, but I don't want to stop this conversation. And my supporting it tonight does not mean I don't appreciate what we are all facing here. But I do know that this CIP is not different than what other communities are doing. And I don't want to be that community that did not do what is a smart planning item that every community needs to do. That is my reason for supporting this is a smart thing. Just like when we meet with our financial planners and you make your plan out there, there's smart things to do.
Thank you. We'll go Councillor Wright and then Councillor Zeid.
So thank you. I'd just like to take a step back and think about capital and think about maintenance. And that's one of the things that appealed to me in the way that Councillor Zeid presented it to us. I would highly encourage the administration to continue doing what they're doing and bump up the maintenance of our assets in our regular budget so that we have the ability to avoid the things that have happened to us as a community. If the Brown School had maintenance assigned to it, the furnace wouldn't have failed. We would have had an opportunity to put a little bit of money towards keeping a valuable city asset operating and up and running. We're faced with the same situation now with the voting station on Plum Island. Again, there's been no maintenance or upkeep to that city-owned building, and now we're facing the cost of having to spend money that should have been in the maintenance budget on things that have become 10 times more expensive than if we'd have spent a tenth of the cost on the maintenance side. I really think that it's in our best interests as a community to take a very thoughtful pause on capital and give ourselves the opportunity to really focus on one or two things that absolutely need to get done so that we can build up the money that we need to have in our budgets to maintain what we have before we add something else or 5 other things. And as far as this list of items that we have here, it's not to me, it's not a planning document because there's $20 million worth of, or more, of water infrastructure that says it's coming from the enterprise fund. That's not a plan. Because if that's a plan, what does that mean for rates and for rates? What does that mean to the taxpayer? What does that mean to the ratepayer? So the things that are in here are just a list. There's no plan. It's not really a planning document. I don't think it informs us. I don't think it informs the administration. I don't think it informs the water and sewer boards as to what we need to do. I'm not going to support this. First of all, I continue to be insulted that it was amended so that they could resolve a conflict. I think that was disingenuous. I think that was a poor representation of the thoughtfulness that we put into, as a council, that we put into to discussing that document. So I'm still personally insulted by the fact that they just threw out the one item to get this thing passed. Whether you call it a plan or a list, I'm still not going to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Zeid.
Thank you. Yeah, I know this is the time in the debate where everybody gets tired and we just want to vote on it and be done, but I'm not done. I want somebody to stand up tonight. First of all, I'm amazed that a colleague would say that it's the mayor. That's the mayor. Then why do we should write the CIP out of the charter, because if the assumption is that the mayor has already taken the cuts from it that need to be taken and that the underlying assumptions are accurate, then Why? Why do we spend any time on it? I mean, I'm incredulous at that. That's number one. Number two is, of all the conversation tonight, I would like somebody who's going to vote yes on this to stand up and defend it. That this plan is economically feasible, that this plan is operationally feasible, that taxpayers could look at this, and if there's a project they find important, and it says in FY26 that it will be done, that they believe, that the council reasonably believes that to be true. I don't think the answer to any of those is yes. I certainly can't argue that, and for that reason, I can't vote yes. Maybe you don't like what I put forward, but I said, you know, my 5 tests for a successful plan. Is the plan financially reasonable? Is it operationally feasible? Does the plan address needs before wants in a prioritized fashion? Does it treat taxpayers fairly across all burdens? You can't even assess this plan against the taxpayer burden because it doesn't really say anything about that. Is it sustainable for 5 years and foundationally sustainable beyond that? Does the plan encompass all projects? So a lot was made last time about the councillors who voted no on the CIP, but I'm challenging my colleagues who plan to vote yes tonight. Please stand up and defend this plan. I've tried to convince others to vote no. Please convince me to vote yes.
Thank you. Councillor Donahue.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll do that. Because it's our job. That's why. We're supposed to pass a CIP. It's in our charter. If we don't want it, that's another conversation to have another time. But we wanted priorities. They didn't give it to us, but nobody wanted anything specific to be cut. I mean, you can go back and forth all night long, and that's what we're doing now. But nothing substantive was offered to the administration any more than was offered to us. So we are here. We didn't nail it this time. So we want to do better, then we do better next time. But we can't just keep saying, well, you know, this is a list. No, it's not. It's a plan. No, it's not a plan. It's a list. I mean, that's not going to get us anywhere. So I didn't find anything on the list that was, you know, something we don't need. So that's why I'm supporting it. I understand that it is, in fact, a working document that is a planning document. It's not a list per se alone. It is something that helps guide us. And yes, it needs priorities, but if we're not going to offer any direction, I don't know how we get that offended. I think administration, you know, put their best foot forward and try and make everybody happy, but that's not going to fly. We need something whittled down. We need specifics, but everybody needs to give that input. Not just one person saying, I want priorities. The administration's not going to respond to that. And I don't know that they could. So, I mean, I'm going to support it, but obviously we need to do this differently or not at all. So,
Councillor Harmon, and then Councillor Zeder-McCauley.
Thank you. I feel like Taylor Swift. It's me. Hi. I'm the recusal. It's me. I'm the only person in the room, I believe, at this point who's never voted on this CIP. And so one of the things that I'm doing is this is my first round on the budget process. I found it very educational. I anticipated June going a little differently than it did because I had seen past councils debate budgets. Line items were proposed for cuts. Line items were proposed for cuts from the CIP. Things were debated as in terms of what was going to be included. None of that happened. But so I went back a little bit, and I looked at CIPs on the city website. They go back to 2014, and I don't know if any of my colleagues have been on the council since then. But many CIPs in the format that we are presented with tonight have been voted on and approved every single time. Same prioritization, same budget considerations. The CIP that was voted on in 2023 for this year was accompanied by a budget that increased by, I think, 4.3%. This CIP is accompanied by a budget that I think increases by 4.4%. I might have those reversed. And so the reason why I'm supporting this is because, to my fellow councillor from Ward 2, very good point, is that it's part of our job to have a CIP on the books. We found that out when this CIP did not pass. All of that being said, I think this is a really healthy and instructive dialogue to be having as a council. The CIP that we'll vote on as amended, as has been noted tonight, was dated May 13th. I didn't hear in the budget meetings, I believe my chair of Budget and Finance would attest to the fact that I missed a single one. I didn't leave early, I didn't come late. I sat through every single one of those budget conversations. I didn't hear debate with department heads or the mayor about what's included in the CIP. I didn't hear on the floor in the council when we discussed the appropriation for the fiscal 25 spending, the $3.4 million that came out of free cash and other grants to fund this fiscal year's CIP items. I didn't hear things being cut for the future years. I didn't hear a question around priorities for water and sewer. It was just there's a lot of water and sewer and that's a big deal and that's my priority. And so I think we can improve and evolve this. I do believe that we should be in the driver's seat of that. I don't believe that 3 months after the fact is the time to be rehashing the structure and shape of a CIP, but rather to the Budget and Finance chairs, very helpful as the first concrete thing that I've been able to look at and say, okay, here's an alternative approach. And I like my colleague, the at-large colleague from Budget and Finance, I also was open to supporting that being included because it gave a different path forward. So whether that's the way or whether it's cookies or whether it's a prioritization retreat, I think we need to move past this moment, understanding my colleague from Ward 1 doesn't believe that moving forward is the right thing to do. I do, because I think we need to put this behind us and set a course for the next budget process, something that we can believe in, something that is responsible, and something that we can work with the administration to shape so that, God willing, we don't find ourselves here a year from now.
Councilor Harmon, Councilor Granis.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions or some comments. I don't understand why my at-large councilor, my colleague, why her requests from the administration were not answered. She clearly reached out to the mayor's chief of staff. Crickets. I mean, that's terrible. Why is prioritizing projects such a bad idea? Why should it be a list? Why can't it be, instead of a list, why is it not priorities of this city? I do agree with my at-large councilor statement of omitting a project and resubmitting it to the council. Very disingenuous. It doesn't feel right. We should have a CIP with prioritization in my mind. I am very much on the fence. I don't know where I am at the moment, but that is all. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Councilor McCauley.
Yeah, I'd just like to help us a little bit as we try to find our footings, right? So in fiscal year 2025, just in summary, page 6 of the budget CIP, the amended CIP, is general fund projects are $15 million. So we saw, depending on what we wanted to spend, either from Councilor Aziz, which was projects totaling $95,000, or the budget directors, the finance director's plan of $1.3 million, so or $1.4 million, somewhere in there. So somewhere along the line, we've got to get $15 million into $1.4 million in terms of what a plan and priority is. But then you say, oh, okay, well, DPS Highway, we took that out, and that's in the operational budget, so now it's down to $10 million. And then we're hoping we get the MSBA for the schools, which is 1.5, but it could go to 3 if we don't get that funding. And the big number that gets pushed out is the $7 million here for the new center that's proposed, and that's in fiscal year 25. Well, to fit, so you move that to 26, and then you could probably get the rest of it in here between pay-as-you-go and some long-term debt along the way. That's kind of a plan, but we don't see that, right? So in 2026, once again, we have to assume there's $19 million that's in there, plus the $7 million that could pushed over. So now it's $26 million that's got to fit into under $2 million of project work that we can afford going forward. So what happens? Once again, we have to assume the road at $4.5 million gets incorporated into the operational budget, but that's not a guarantee because we have to decide on that, and that will have implications on our tax rate going forward. Well, there's a big line in here for parks. So the park project that was delayed maybe 3 years now gets pushed out till 29. You see what I mean? When we talk about the priorities that have to happen here, the things that some people find important, there's no room for them until 2028. And that's just doing the stuff we have to do. Never mind, you know, the things we need in information technology and planning and development and police and fire. These are things we kind of sort of have to do. These aren't, you know, their requests tend to be kind of short-term, and they're related to the work that they do every day. And so that's a problem here. I mean, you know, again, I'm not passing judgment, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying that when you look at the numbers and you look at what we can spend, they don't jive. So yes, it's a good tool to use to identify the projects and where they can fit in, but to the questions that are asked, excuse me, can we defend whether it's actually going to work in fiscal year 25 or 26? No, I don't know that anybody can say that it's going to. And that's part of the debate that we're having here, and I think it's a good debate we're having here. So I yield on that unless anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Shand.
So I didn't make it to all of them. My apologies on that one. I'm sure that was probably a good discussion that was had in the spring. I'm sorry a councillor at large's response to an email was not replied to. I'm sorry a councillor feels like Taylor Swift. CIP is not perfect. It's a tool, just like Councillor for Ward 5 said. And hopefully the administration's hearing this robust debate we're having tonight. But at this point in time, we know it's not perfect. Hopefully next year we can do better. We can't do much worse because we've certainly shown that this has been a pretty tough year for CIP. But I am going to approve it just because, as my Ward 2 and 4 and other at-large councillors have said, it's part of our charter. We need to have some sort of guide. It might not be a great guide. It might be it's just a tool, but it is what we have right now, and I will support it going forward. And hopefully next year we can do better.
Yeah, Councillor Z, then Khan and Preston.
I just have two quick things. One is a lot has been mentioned about obligation, and so my question for my colleagues is, which obligation is more important, to pass anything or to pass something that actually has merit? Because it's really interesting to say it's our job, and so the reverse implication is if you don't pass it, you're not doing your job. To me, the obligation to pass something that you believe in far outweighs the obligation to pass anything just to say that you did it. That's number one. Number two is, what's usually lost in this, to keep it very simple, is the resident perspective. So if a resident catches you and asks you if NRYS will be built the way and at the cost the CIP shows, can you say with even a 50% degree of confidence that you know the answer to that question in either direction? My opinion, the answer is absolutely not. I tell residents all the time, I have no idea what's going to happen with that. I really don't. The problem is, it's not just that project, it's every project. Do you know if the dam will be fixed up for the Artichoke? No idea. Do you know if we'll be able to make expenditures, say, on the Bartlett Mall? No, don't really know. I know it's in the list, and maybe it could get done, maybe it won't. So I don't think people are thinking about this from the resident perspective. How many of us were emailed and said, well, I don't understand, it was in the CIP, doesn't that mean it's going to get done? Answer is no, because it's not that kind of document. So keep that in mind as you consider.
Thank you. Councillor Khan, then Preston. Councillor Preston, go for it.
Sorry, I thought you went out of order there for a second. So I was essentially going to say the same sort of thing, but you know, to me, I think we do ourselves a much better service. And well, let me start by saying I agree. We do, per charter, need to get a CIP on the books, and we need to agree to something. But I would feel much better agreeing to a document that I actually think is meaningful than the document that we have in front of us. Without prioritization, it's clearly a $154 million list of things we know we can't do. We can't afford all of them. And so I think we're much better serving the people of Newburyport by pushing back on this, saying no to this document, forcing the process forward. The administration has to work on something that has more of an amendment than just eliminating the need for a recusal, and actually force the administration to do the work to help us get to a place where we can all collectively, we as a council and the administration, have a prioritization and a plan rather than a list of things that people want to do, but we all agree we can't afford to do. So I think we better serve the people of Newburyport by pushing back on this and saying no to it. And we do the work, we roll up our sleeves, and we do find a CIP that works for all of us. But saying yes to the list that we know doesn't work, I don't think that's the best serve for people.
Councillor Khan?
So in the past, we've gone through line item by line item and we've moved things. We have. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, I think the challenge that was thrown out is to defend why we're going to support it. You know, I never had to defend this before in my whole 7 times of being a city councilor. I don't actually remember anyone being asked to defend their vote on the CIP. So this is totally new, and I'm serious here. So I'm now being asked to basically, you know, 2 things I'm asked. You know, I know exactly what folks mean when you're saying that if you look at all and tally the total numbers, how are we going to do everything? This is why it's always been seen as a forecasting plan. And let me tell you what happens with the plans is things come on and off. Because you're trying to see, we have like maintenance things in here. The source of funding here is complex. You know, you see one thing, that first page, go towards the end where you see the source of funding. And you can hone in on those that are free cash, those that are coming from the maintenance, that are coming from the operating budget. So there's some complexities here because each of these projects, like if in my head actually I was thinking, all right, let me eliminate something. Let me just say I motion to remove this item. Trying to come up with my head, what's a number? What's that sweet spot number that's going to get all of us to support this? But as I'm looking at it, I'm like looking now to see, well, what's the thread to follow with each funding? Where is it coming from? And so there are some real easy ones, and I think this is why I called it stinky cheese. So you guys got to understand, there's a reason I said that. That one is the one that has the source of funding that's not CPA. There's some maybe donation money, some other ways to do it, but it is probably the biggest one here when we look at what doesn't have a thread of additional funds, like enterprise money. Instead, that one is really being, and this is where we go, one of the bulleted items on the CIP, maybe new strategy, well, which ones are wants, which ones are needs? And as you guys all know, we disagree on that. I do think a need for the kids is to have, and a department to have a place. So that's going to be, to me, a need, but maybe it's seen as a want to some of you guys. Are we going to sit here and never come to some agreement on anything? And that's what's sad here, because I am willing to go through to try to get people to accept something that we've accepted before, because it gives us an idea of what are the building blocks to put together. Here are all the blocks. We don't have to use them all. They're there, though. We know what they are. We won't be, and the public knows. The public knows, okay, yeah, there's going to be a dispatch center renovation. It's slated for fiscal year 2025. If you ask me, like, Froze is now trying to find money to get this to a level that everyone will support, maybe I'll delete that item. But then we lost it. What if later, all of a sudden, we find out, okay, dispatch center, it's kind of moved up a priority, or we got this money to have it all paid for. Wouldn't that be lovely? Well, then we could pull that block and say, oh, yeah, yep, I remember that thing. Oh, but it's paid for. It's just, that would be lovely if that happened. But that's how I see these. These are blocks of critical areas. And how we piece them together, that's why we look at it year by year. And so, asking me to defend why I'm going to support that is I want to see all the blocks I have to work with. And I want to, when it's time for us to actually fund it, because nothing gets funded without coming before us. But I want to know, and remember, if I'm going to be supporting schools, college and career center feasibility study, okay, I chose the wrong one, it's only 10,000. But if I chose something here, if I chose something here, though, I want to say, like the Market Landing Park expansion, 134 for the next, 4 years from 2024. Before I approve that, though, I want to remember, oh, wait a second, we have this bulkhead thing here, too. How are those going to match? Why are we doing this one? Do we have enough money maybe to group the two projects together? That's the plan. That's the plan that tells you how things could be tied together. So to me, this is a good start. This is something, it's not tying us to anything. And I still want to emphasize the other things we can do to get closer to what we think are the priorities, because I think that's the gap here. And in terms of my statement that I was pointed out someone was shocked that I said is that the mayor has to cross something off. I'm sorry, when the budget's done, the mayor does talk to the departments and say, you know what, that line item, you can't do that. Sorry, that's what the mayor does.
Councillor Wright.
Okay. Not to be redundant, but we have page 15 of the plan, $154 million in the next 5 years. There's no way on God's green earth that our budget can ever support $154 million worth of capital improvements. I'm sorry. It's like having a champagne taste on a beer budget. So that's why this document is unrealistic. It doesn't help to plan anything. $154 million is the 5-year total of capital improvements that are in the capital improvement plan. Come back to me with $5 million a year in projects. Reduce it by 10-fold. And then I will agree with you that it's a feasible, fiscally sound way to address our capital over the next 5 years. $154 million.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, I just have to say, but you have to add the grants, the enterprise numbers, those are not all just general fund. I just want to point that out.
Thank you. Councillor Harmon.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Last year, the previous council approved the CIP that's currently in effect for $134 million.
Okay. Councillor Lane.
So, some more history. Since I've started in 2020, this thing has not made sense. I've asked the finance director multiple times, can we afford all this? And he laughed at me. Every single year I get laughed at. This is a list. It's not a plan. So if we have to have a plan in place by state mandate, and that's why we have to vote on this thing, yes, and push it through, we're doing it to satisfy the city solicitor's recommendation, is what I hear. So,
it's just in the charter.
And another point of clarification, the only thing that I've really ever seen come off of this plan was to get it passed tonight in history that I can think of. I can't think of any other thing that's been on the plan since I started, or even before I started, that's come off, other than this, within the last couple of months to get it passed. So I look at my job a little differently. I do it to represent my residents. I do it to keep things affordable for the multiple people that are in fixed incomes in my ward who have felt like they've been pushed aside for 20, 30 years. And to get things done like Phillips Drive, which I'm proud of, to get things done like Noble Street, there's many, many, many other things that I want to get done, to the point of, if you ask me what my priority is, I much rather would have taken the $1 million for the Plummer Springs Bridge, which is in my ward, and put it towards NYS, and given that a little bit of a boost. And the last thing I just want to close with was, people ask, well, there was no cuts. You didn't make any cuts, so you didn't make any recommendations. Because I knew going into that meeting that there was 6 votes that were going to be yes. And much like the at-large councillor said that night, why waste anybody's time? If that's how it's going to be, that's how it's going to be. It seems like every vote we have was settled last November and will be settled next November, because that's the way it is. It just feels to me like we're playing, to use it again, Game of Thrones here, where everybody's going to vote together for what reason we don't know, other than to keep our friends. So I'm not trying to be condescending, but I'm a little bit irritated with this whole process. And yeah, I am glad that the question was asked, can you justify why you're a yes vote? I was told very early on when I became a councillor, it's good to stand up and explain why you vote the way you do. So I'm actually enjoying this quite immensely, and I feel like we're getting to a point where we all see this is not a plan, it's a list. It's unachievable, and it's not responsible in our jobs to represent the people who hire us to do exactly what we're doing.
Councillor Shand, then Councillor Khan.
Just wanted to state that if we wanted to make cuts that night, we should have, regardless of how we thought folks were going to vote, because that is our job.
Mm-hmm. Just to clarify, if I can, real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. It is our job. I'm stating that there was going to be no cuts from anybody at the table, and there wasn't any cuts from anyone at the table. So if we think that it's sustainable, great. But explain why it's sustainable. Explain why you feel that way. I can tell you why I don't feel that way. I like to hear why people feel the way they do.
Councillor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I thought I did with the blocks, but maybe I wasn't very clear. And there's so many things said I won't respond to, but I'll tell you this much, that I've never seen something like this process, which makes me think, where did we break down a little bit? I think part of it also is kind of walking through the CIP, maybe in another way. And maybe my way that I look at it might be different than how other people look at it. So for me, I look at starting from 112, page 112, towards the back, because that, gives the source of where the money's coming from, which is important. As you noticed, every single project will have source of where the money's coming from, where 60, 70, 80% might be either free cash or going to ordinary debt, or it could be grants, it could be CPA, it could be enterprise. That's a very important piece of the story to a project and how it gets done. So the reason I didn't propose any cuts is I was satisfied with that. I don't know what other answer people want from me. I mean, it's being said we're in a block and we're not thinking about it. No, if you guys look at my history on the CIP, I've never cut anything. So, and it's changed over the times I've sat on this council. That is just not, I think, fair to say to any of us here, because I think everyone here brings an independent perspective. So I think what we really need to get to, what we should, instead of maybe being frustrated and lashing, we should really think about how could we get to a place of, and I think the residents deserve this, and those who are still watching, great for you. I'm sure popcorn's been made. But I think we can do this. I really do. And I really appreciate the conversation, all of it, except being told about the Game of Thrones block. I do love that show, but which group would I be? I don't have dragons, although my daughters could be called that. But I really do think that this has been great. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And like I said, as I sat here, I did try to see, okay, what could I do? What could I start taking out? But again, I go to that part from page 112, and like I said, it's like pulling a thread and then losing, like, really where that money's coming, which ones are the ones, and that's why I said NYS is the one that stands out to me with not as many threads. And that could be maybe the problem. And I didn't mean, stinky cheese maybe wasn't a good way to say it, but it is the thing that's here in front of center for us. But I go back, and I know now we're just, I just want to tell everyone I do appreciate this conversation, and it's been late. But I will be supporting this, and I hope I explained enough why, instead of people feeling like there's a block or whatever. I don't have the appetite to do cuts. And really, I did look at a few. Like, if I look at the big ticket items, in fact, look, I just added something for L Street. If I had an appetite to cut, I would have subtracted $775 out of somewhere else.
I'm just going to state a couple of facts. I'm not going to give any opinions because I'm too tired to relinquish the chair and then climb back up here. But I had sent around, the MMA is doing a webinar, an hour long, on September 24th. It's about exactly this. And I think that might be useful. We're Newburyport, and I know we resist comparisons to other communities, but I think that would be worthwhile checking in. I've learned a lot about this whole process because every time I've been on the council, it has pretty much kind of just sailed through. Maybe we've done more pre-work, or I'm not really sure. So I do thank Taylor Swift for helping facilitate this conversation. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. I'm going to re-up that with Ethan Manning and the mayor and the chief of staff, because I think, clearly there's some issues that we need to get into process-wise and facing the reality that it's a big ask and there's not enough money to go around for it. So that's all I wanted to state.
Can I make a motion to move the question?
There's no high, medium, low.
A motion made to move the question. Seconded by Councillor Khan. Okay, roll call on that?
Moving the question, Councillor Shane?
Yes.
Councillor Wright?
No.
Vote it down. How does the administration move forward?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, wow, that's cool.
I didn't think, according to Robert's rules, I didn't think it was a
line item.
a votable issue.
No, what I mean,
It's not interruptible, or you can't have another motion on top of it, but it is, you vote on.
So then, yes.
Last year's in effect until we vote another one.
Councillor Donahue?
This is on the motion to move the question?
Correct.
Yes.
Councillor Granis?
Yes.
Councillor Harmon?
Can I get clarification what we're voting on?
Nothing else can be said after this.
Yes.
To end debate.
Councillor Khan?
Yes.
Councillor Lane?
Yes.
Councillor McCauley?
Yes.
Councillor Preston?
Yes.
Councillor Cameron?
Yes.
I believe the question is on the floor for approval of the CIP Order 586. Should we go to a roll call?
Yes, roll call.
Roll call. Everyone understand? We are approving the Order 586. Councillor Shan?
Yes.
Councillor Wright?
No.
Councillor Zede?
No.
Councillor Donahue?
Yes.
Councillor Granis?
No.
Councillor Harmon?
Yes.
Councillor Khan?
Yes.
Councillor Lane?
No.
No. Councillor McCauley?
No.
Councillor Preston?
No.
Councillor Cameron?
Yes.
6 to 5, motion fails.
Okay.
That would be...
Been a long time since I started here, but that's it for Budget and Finance tonight. I do want to just note a couple of administrative things. We cannot, due to a conflict of mine, and I apologize to my colleagues, I can't meet on Thursday, so we've moved our meeting to Monday, the following. But we're going to be in the Senior Center, so hopefully we're not in anybody's way for their meeting physically anyways, and we will accommodate any late arrivals coming from other committees. We took a lot of committee of the whole items in, and I will endeavor to get the agenda posted probably tomorrow morning so you can know what's coming out next Monday. And then finally, just a heads up, I just want to remind everybody that the next typical inflection point for budget is that free cash unfreezes and tax rate setting. So get ready for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Services.
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we have our next meeting on Monday night at 5, which hopefully, given the fact that there's a competing budget and finance at 6, some of you can come at least for some of that. But all we do have is the share bike program. Well, not all, but hopefully we can make it work for everybody, especially since we do have some competing members in the 2 meetings. I will endeavor to work with the administration to at least have someone there that can hopefully help us through the conversation that we had previously about what orders should we expect from the administration, how does the administration see bringing this forward. I'll also reach out to the Livable Streets people and make sure that we have someone from there represented so that we can have a productive conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. For general government, nothing coming out of committee. We are getting some progress on hiring an investigator for the library issue, and you'll be hearing more about that within the next week or so. That would bring us to licenses and permits.
Thank you, Council President. So before I bring out the specific applications, I just want to point out that all of the applications, paperwork for all of the applications are in order. So I will move to approve application 219.
Second.
So this application is for a movable sign to be at Polished on Pleasant. It's on the grass by the parking lot at Unicorn Street. The applicant came before us via Zoom, and after discussion, we voted to approve this 3-0.
Any discussion? Hearing none, application, do a voice vote.
Sure.
Seeing the head nod. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say
No.
no. Thank you. Was there a no?
Yes.
Okay, one no. Thank you. That was Councillor Donahue? Okay, thanks.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve application 225, 226, and 227.
Second.
So these are all for the same location. It's for 3 different businesses that are located in proximity of New Pasture Road. They've had the signs in existence at this location for in excess of 15 years. But it just became apparent to them that they needed a license to have the signs there. Both parties appeared before us and explained where it was located. New Pasture Road intersects with Graff Road, and the signs are located so they're not an obstruction to anybody who's trying to access New Pasture Road, either going in or leaving. It's set back off the street quite a ways, off of Graff Road. So after discussion, the council, the committee voted 3-0 to approve all 3 applications.
Okay, any further discussion on collectively approving those 3 applications? On all 3, 225, 226, 227, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. Okay.
And then to accommodate our meeting on, planning and development meeting on Wednesday of next week, we've moved license and permits to Tuesday so that we can conduct the items that were just referred to us. So our next meeting will be on Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Councillor Shand.
Through the chair, the block party on Russia Street on 9/21, is that not going to happen since our next meeting's not till 9:30?
They didn't show up.
They didn't show up? Okay.
Okay.
So why don't we let them know?
It's Russia Street, it's like nothing. I don't know.
Well, I can make a motion to approve it. We can approve it now.
I would
Just
do
hasn't
that.
come out of
I
committee.
would second it if you made that motion.
I don't know what the procedural.
I just don't want, you know.
First motion
Out
to
of
take it
committee.
out.
I'll make a motion to take it out of committee.
And waive the rules and take it out.
Waive the rules, take it out of committee.
Second.
Okay, so motion made to remove from committee, waive the rules. Is that approval as well, or does that need to be a separate?
We can, well, do you want to just briefly discuss what it is? So I think.
You can make the motion and then discuss it.
Okay, yeah, I'll move to do that, all 3.
Okay, all 3. All right. Yes, do you want to discuss it? So motion made and seconded, I think. Councillor McCauley.
I think he's looking up the application.
Yeah, I am.
Don't have them all memorized. There's a lot of them.
We all are looking at it.
You got it? Thank you. Okay, so this is for September 21st. The rain date is September 22nd. The street closing is from Russia Street to the bottom of Olive Street. And looks like all their paperwork's in order, and they've done this previously as well. So it's scheduled to go from 2 o'clock until 7 p.m.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I don't know. It's a tough one. I wonder if we should add a condition that it's conditional upon the clerk or the chair at least be able to talk to the applicant by phone or something, just to confirm they're still having it on that date. Could the clerk do that? Just connect and make
That'd be
sure
great.
that they
Yeah,
understand.
Yeah.
Ukraine Street?
Russia.
Yes, Ukraine Street, the sign's up.
It's a funny joke.
Yes.
So if that's friendly.
Friendly amendment.
Yes, I agree to that.
Second, was that you?
I will second that amendment, if nobody has.
Second, yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
All right.
And it did get the approvals, obviously.
Yeah, I waive the rules, take it out, and approve it.
No, yeah.
Subject to the clerk.
The applicant, just at least touching base.
Okay.
Aye. No, sorry.
All those in favor? Aye.
I think that's a roll call.
Yeah, with all that wavering, and
Yeah,
we'll do a roll
waving
call.
rules, I think.
So hold that thought, Councillor Lane.
On the aforesaid motion, Councillor Shan.
Yes.
Councillor Wright.
Yes.
Councillor Zede.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Councillor Donahue.
Yes.
Councillor Granis. Councillor Harmon.
Yes.
Councillor Khan.
Yes.
Councillor Lane. Councillor
Yes.
McCauley.
Yes.
Councillor Preston.
Yes.
And Councillor Cameron. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Councillor Wright. Planning and Development.
Sure. Nothing's coming out tonight. We'll remind folks that the housing meeting is at the Senior Center Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. As Councillor Wright was mentioning, next week we will be having our joint meeting with the Planning Board on the zoning ordinance for the Port Plaza overlay. At 6:30 that night, we will be doing the appointment for Heather Rogers, the public hearing for her reappointment to the Planning Board, 6:30. So hopefully everyone can make that one. And then I will coordinate with the planning director on when we will be scheduling the zoning for, the public hearing for the zoning on the ADUs. And that is it for planning and development.
Thank you. Public Works and Safety?
There's nothing coming out tonight, but just want to remind folks on Monday, the 16th, we have a number of items, talking to the new marshal appointee, as well as some items for surveillance and surveillance cameras along the way. I am anticipating that the camera discussion will probably bleed over to a second meeting going forward, and I'm trying to secure time on the 23rd to finish that up, to bring it all back in by the 30th, but that will all depend on what we can accomplish on the 16th. But all of the items that have come in should be addressed over the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good of the order. Councillor Zede?
I'm just following up on a theme from this evening, which is I would love to understand a way that chairs can do some level of coordination when things are coming out. I think, as I mentioned early on, I think there's a lot in, which means there's a lot going to come out. And when you really think about the rest of 2024, not that we don't go into the new year with the same session, it's a lot of stuff. So if any other chair is interested in brainstorming with me, there are 6 of us, so we can't do it by email or something, because that would essentially be a special city council meeting. But perhaps we could have a conversation, just like, when do you think something's going to come out, and we can make a calendar just so we can share with our colleagues and with ourselves to know what to be kind of prepped for. I think would be helpful. I would appreciate it anyways.
Thank you. Councillor Lane?
This is silly. It's always been something on my mind. Can we just normalize saying councillor, whatever the last name is, instead of councillor at large? There's 5 councillors at large. It gets really confusing keeping back and forth. I know Robert's rules are meant to keep it from getting personal. I think they meant first name. I think somewhere along the way it got chopped up and we got away with names at all, and I think it's just silly. I don't think anybody's going to be insulted by being Councillor Lane or Councillor Wright or Councillor Swift.
That's specified in our rules, so we'd have to adjust our rules too.
It is in terms of last names?
Yes.
Yes.
No names.
I thought it was just a Robert's rule thing from what I was told.
Specified in our council rules.
We can take a look. Motion to adjourn made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.